Questions like, why are we here? What happens when you die? Where did we come from? And is there a God?
The U.S. government has been shown to have had a long-term interest in Scientology.
This is a practical question here.
I know this is an illusion, or dream, or call it the way you want to call, you know?
We are a bigger threat to the people who are secretly trying to control this planet than any other group on this planet.
But the problem with an atheist is he believes that his belief is based on fact.
Oh, it's wireless. Yeah, you got wireless one.
He's impressive. He's a powerful guy.
I can't make this shit up.
The leaders of this are not just after our church, they're after the whole of this planet.
He was put here to work out his own salvation. And we feel in Scientology that we've made a very big stride in that direction.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast with your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. And isn't it lovely to be here listening to the good old Strauss? This is the podcast that has everything to do with the interesting world of Scientology. Yes, that odd religion you might have heard about. If you don't know what Scientology is, then I'll tell you. It's a huge collection of self-help books and mind exercises and spiritual exercises that became a religion. And it was created in the 1950s by L. Ron Hubbard. Today's guest interview is part 2 with Scott Gordon. I hope you like part 1 as much as I did, because now we have part 2. Oh, it's now time for us to go down that rabbit hole into the interesting world of Scientology, where up is down and down is up, where left is right and right is left, where what you thought was impossible is possible. Welcome to the show on this Tuesday, the 7th of May, 2019.
Oh, welcome.
Yes, welcome. I've got something on my mind, and I don't want to talk about it too much because, you know, the interview won't start until like 30 minutes in, and I can go on rants, or I can go down rabbit holes and just talk for too long. But I saw the movie Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise, and that it's a good movie. I just got to let people know that, because I don't think it has as... I don't think it's rated as high as what it should be. Because I'm into, you know, funky movies and I guess, you know, out there movies and that, but I just hadn't heard about it yet. I remember seeing the trailer when it first came out and stuff, but I never put it down on my list of funky movies to watch, because I've watched like lots of movies and stuff and really unusual ones, but I was just like, why the hell have I not found out about Vanilla Sky? So I just got to let people know that I think that movie's underrated, and I think it's actually a really, really good movie. I don't think it's as amazing as The Matrix and Donnie Darko, but I think it's just a step back from that. And I think that if they'd made some actors, if they'd changed some of the actors and did a bit of a different editing, I think it could have been an incredible, like Donnie Darko, just full-blown incredible, just one of those absolutely perfect pieces of artwork. But I just think it was a bit step back from that. But like, I give it, you know, like almost in that category of just the best art ever. like, which is what Donnie Darko and like Matrix is in, but it's just a step back from that. They just missed out, but they did such a good job for that. And I've got really, really high standards of movies. Like, the amount of movies I'll put in the category of don't even bother watching is just huge. So it's a really big compliment to say that when I say movies in either that top category or the ones or just a step back from that. Like, barely any movies I put into that category, but it's just like, wow. So you got to check out Vanilla Sky if you haven't seen it. It's one of those movies where you have to watch like 3 times and you get more stuff out of it the next time you watch it. And it's got really deep, and I think OTs will get something out of it, and it has some information, has some real deep information about life and stuff. And when I watched it the first time, it literally made me feel like I was going insane. Like, I know that seems a bit bad, but I mean, at the end of it, I was just like, whoa, like, I mean, like, it really worked. Like, I felt like I was going crazy, and I really related to the movie and stuff as well. And so it was just such a good job. And Tom Cruise was a great actor and stuff, and so I just want to let people know that. Check out the movie Vanilla Sky. It really blows up some lids off how your postulates create reality and stuff. Now, we've got an independent Scientology success story. And this might be from my twin on the Data Evaluators course that I'm doing. It's wins from original OT4 solo auditing sessions. So this is not the squirrel stuff, and this isn't the stuff. This is the stuff that you used to do in the church before it got squirreled. All right, so original OT4 is quite different to run from not, but no less amazing. In fact, the results of my most recent solo session were astounding, and the wins, well, here are some for you. After my most recent session, I had so many profound cogs that it took about 15 minutes for all of the following realizations to trickle down. I had some confidential type wins also appear. Those were about 2/3 of my total wins. So that's a lot of wins for one session. Here is what I can tell you. I recognize the immediacy of control over my environment with my postulates and the power of my knowingness. Knowingness is just that, I know. Postulates and knowingness are twins. There is no think. High ARC goes right along with those postulates and knowingness. I also realized that with high ARC... All right, she's writing ARCU. I have no idea what ARCU is. So I thought it was a typo, but she's done it twice. All right. It says high ARCU goes... Oh, affinity, reality, communication, understanding. Okay. All right. I guess it's just elaborating on what ARC sort of means. High ARCU goes right along with those postulates and knowingness. I also realized that with high ARCU, it's harder to make errors in relationship to others, which is a happiness to me. Start from high ARCU and you can really go wrong. And you can't, start from high ARCU and you can't really... Sorry, I was getting distracted by Vanilla Sky because Tom Cruise is a Scio and he's in it, and the guy from My Name is Earl, can't remember his name. I think that's the guy. He's in it. He's a Scio as well. And whoever wrote it, maybe Tom influenced whoever wrote it, but there's some Scientology things, little Scientology things have been put into it. It's really interesting. And also it was based on... It was a copy of like a Spanish movie that was written before The Matrix, and it sort of has ideas as similar to The Matrix, where it's sort of like an artificial reality, but sort of almost like a simulation or something. Anyway, it's like it wasn't like I thought when I first watched it. I thought it was written after The Matrix, and I thought, oh yeah, they were sort of just copying off The Matrix. But now that I find out that the original Spanish version was before The Matrix, it was like, wow, they did a really good job then. I mean, that would in 97, that would have been like, whoa, as a movie to watch, like a good movie. And then when they made the Tom Cruise version, they improved on it. So it was like the original writer and then the Tom Cruise crew that came along for Vanilla Sky, and they both combined and made a great movie. Okay, sorry, went off track. I also realized that with high ARCU, it's harder to make errors in relationship to others, which is a happiness to me. Start from high ARCU and you can't really go wrong. Last, I feel more calm and serene than I have ever in my life. Coincidentally, I have also been studying the Data Evaluators course through standard... Yeah, obviously this is my twin. Coincidentally, I have also been studying the Data Evaluators course through Standard Tech Academy, and I feel that part of these wins is due to my increased discernment about data in my world. Training is so important. So much of what I have been trained on comes right back to help me in auditing and vice versa. Higher ARCU will probably be a huge help when I do checkouts on my data series evaluators course mates, which is me. Thanks to Jonathan Burke for his CSing, all the help and encouragement, and having made the Standard Tech Academy available to all, because he's got the online courses and that's who we're doing it with. Thanks especially to LIH, who paved the way and always amazes me with these processes. How did he do that? And the policies to back them up and keep the bridge working properly. Much ARCU, Mary. Cool. So that was original OT4, and these are the OT levels, right? The government, the secret parts of the military or whatever, came in and snatched from Scientology and then gave them back some tech that was like drawn out and stretched out to make it appear as if no OT level was missing. Like, they're not dumb. You know what I mean? Like, as in, they don't just take an OT level and just say, oh, that's been cancelled or whatever. Like, they do something a bit more clever than that and put something else there so people don't know that it's gone. You know what I mean? So they've taken the tech and they've taken it under their wings and they've hidden it because they didn't want people being OT. They don't want people getting these abilities. It's that simple. And it isn't necessarily because they're all full of SPs in the military and the government and all that. It's because they didn't want their Russians getting the technology or other stuff. And so, they wouldn't have infiltrated Scientology and secretly taken the upper level tech if it didn't work, and obviously it works. And I don't think that it necessarily, it seems like even when people do the standard tech, I don't think it's like suddenly you can do amazing things and move objects with your mind and just exteriorize whenever you want. But I guess if you naturally could do those sort of things, you're much more likely to do them, and it helps you on your journey a lot towards achieving those abilities. And if you want to just learn how to remote view, just go to I would go to the Farsight Institute and just learn, but it's a lot of hours. Like to get to the top abilities, like like in the movies, the remote viewers in their really cool investigation movies from the Farsight, like that's a lot of effort to get to that. Like, because I've done a bit of the remote viewing training and I've got to do a bit more, but I'm telling you, I mean, it's almost like it becomes your whole new religion, remote viewing. And I haven't decided yet if I'm going to even bother trying to properly learn it. I'm at least going to try and learn it a little bit, but like, I don't know if I want to do that when I can just let the expert or the person who has the time become an expert in it, and then I can like maybe get money and just pay them to investigate the things that I want them to investigate. You know what I mean? Like, let's say I really want to know about like a certain moon that's going around Mars. Well, just get them to do it. Or I want to really know what happened to L. Ron Hubbard when he died. Just pay them to do it. And then I can review all this other information about aliens and all that sort of stuff, and then they can be the experts at remote viewing, and I can use them as a reliable source. I think that might be better. You know what I mean? So I haven't decided, but if you're not, but it's, to me, I think Scientology is more increasing your smartness, your knowledge, your awareness of your own self, and you can get sort of the remote viewing ability more, But it seems that remote viewing, it's more you just get this ability, but you don't really know who you were in your past life and all this other sort of stuff. So that's why I would say Scientology is better and it's like a full-blown religion, but maybe just add in the remote viewing if you're interested in that area. I'm probably not going to do it. And also, these upper levels in Scientology, when it comes to the exteriorization thing, I heard that if you take this cough medicine, Robitussin, right, something like if you drink a whole cup of it or something, people literally have experiences of exteriorization from that cough medicine, from that drug. And so, you know, you can, like, I just want to let people know that, you know what I mean? Because I'm not totally against drugs, you know what I mean? Like, I think that you can, if you do it in a safe way, you might be able to have some cool experience of exteriorization, you know what I mean? And instead of having to practice something over and over and over again and be like, I want to exteriorize, because I feel like that as a person. Like, I reckon it'd be so freaking cool to exteriorize, you know, and I'm jealous that people get to experience it. And it's just like, hey, you can just go have this cough medicine, Robitussin, and you can actually experience exteriorization. And you're not hallucinating. Like, the drug has an effect on your body and you get to experience it. You get to go outside your body, you know. And someone told me today about it, and it was funny because he was a wog, basically. So, I mean, I think that he probably thought, wow, I'm tripping out or something. But I could tell he obviously had a deep experience, and when he was telling me about it, I could tell that a part of him was like, there's something real to this. Do you know what I mean? Like, he didn't just think, oh, I took something and it was silly for fun and what I had was just a silly tripping experience and it wasn't real. Like, I could tell a part of him was like, wow, that was deep what I experienced. And that might be real, you know what I mean? And if he ever goes to study spiritual stuff in the future, he'll go, Jesus Christ, that was what I experienced when I had that Robitussin experience. I experienced exteriorization. I had astral projection or anyway, something like that. But it's just interesting, you know. So I'm not totally against the use of drugs. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I have plans in the future. I'm going to try this Robitussin thing because I think it would be totally cool to see if I can try it and exteriorize with it. You know what I mean? And worst case scenario, I'll be vomiting because I had drank too much cough medicine or something, you know, and I do regular detoxes or whatever. So I won't do any permanent damage to my body. And hopefully I might get a really cool experience with exteriorization. You know what I mean? Look, I'm against drugs when people are like drinking alcohol every day, when people are smoking weed like every day, and it's like an addiction that they can't beat, and it's holding them back, and it's controlling their behavior in their life, and it's giving them brain damage. You know what I mean? I'm not for someone I'm not against someone trying Robitussin a few times to see if they can exteriorize, and I'm not for somebody, if they're in South America and there's like really good cocaine or something, natural, like real good quality or whatever, just giving it a go while he's on holiday. It's just like, why not? When you're in Rome, you know, just go. Yeah, do it. Why not have some fun as a once-off? You know what I mean? I'm not one of these like hardcore church members that are like, no drugs at all. Drugs are out of the equation. You know what I mean? The only person I would have strict rules on in regards to drugs are people who are addictive personalities. Because if they do something and they really like it, then they cannot control themselves and they'll go back and do it again. I mean, I tried ice 3-4 times and I'll probably never try it again because it's just weird. It's sort of, I could see I was sort of messing with me a little bit. I got that experience. Now I understand what ice is. I understand how people want to do it. It's kind of like coffee. It makes you want to do it again the next day. Like, seriously. You know? And so there's certain people who are, you know, DBs and who are in bad shape and stuff, and they'll go and they'll do it again. You know what I mean? And then next minute they're an addict and they're done. I'm not one of those people. So that's why it's like I'm not concerned about trying Robitussin and then suddenly becoming some cough medicine addict. Like, it's not going to happen, you know. Anyway, I just want to mention that because there's just, amongst Scientologists, there's this real anti-drug thing, and it's just like, it's gone too Nazi, you know. All right. It's now time for Post of the Week. So, here it is. This is by Casper D. Rijk, R-I-J-K, and this was back in January, and it was in the Facebook group Scientology Research Institute. So this is the comment. Some years ago, Maria, ex-2D of Captain Bill Robinson, asked me why I didn't continue with the Phoenix, which is part of the CBR Ron's.org route. And I thought I publish my answer here for whoever it may be useful. Must be a European. Why I did not continue the CBR Phoenix route. The main theory of OT9, Bill Robinson stated as follows. Above thought are two abilities of a Thetan which monitor everything he ever got involved with. These are intention and attention. From Scientology axioms, a Thetan has the ability to postulate and perceive. For postulation, he uses intention. For perception, he uses attention. The problem is that intention and attention are first of all not... Sorry. So that's the end of CBR's quote. Now he says, the problem is that intention and attention are first of all not abilities. Secondly, intention is a type of thought and/or postulate. Thus, it cannot be above thought. Attention is a mechanic and certainly attention is mechanic and certainly not above the ability to perceive. This is another quote by CBR, the tech theory above becomes a technique or process when one realizes that if once we all had full OT abilities, and now we don't, then we must have used them in such a way as to decrease them. This process removes the fixed, stuck, unsuccessfully used postulates and perceptions by locating the intentions and attentions behind them and handling the effects they caused on other dynamics, games, and universes by CBR. And, okay, so that was the end of the quote. Intentions and attentions behind postulates and perceptions is nonsensical as both postulates and perceptions are more basic. LRH defines postulates as causative thinkingness. Attention is a motion which must remain at an optimum effort. The CBR theory that we had full OT abilities and used them to decrease these abilities omits an explanation of how one can have the ability to regulate one's abilities and then not be able to increase/decrease them, supposedly only having the ability to decrease them. So, due to the above illogics, I stopped that route. Later, I took up considerations processing as the highest level processing directly based on the first two axioms, and this is what we still work with in the MGT Institute for Consciousness Exploration. All right, so that to me seems to be someone who disagrees with the Phoenix route for certain reasons why. But I mean, personally with me, I'll be like, well, I'll try it, and if it works, then it works. You know, if it's fun, then it's fun. You know, I mean, I mean, I'll have to sit down and really study this to actually understand what he's really trying to say. I mean, I'll have to read it again and stuff, but because it's a bit deep what he's trying to say and stuff. But Yeah, I mean, I notice that sometimes with people when they make comments about things, they'll be like, well, I disagree with OT4 because OT4 says postulates say this, and then LRH said this about this, so that means this and that, this, and I just go, oh, this is all just like significance and just going too deep into it and stuff, you know? It's just like someone will say something like, I'm trying to think of an example, like a lower level bridge example. Oh, they'll be like, it happens a lot with Dianetics because Dianetics says LRH says something is the case, and then years later with the Scientology tech, he'll then say something is the case, and then people will be like, but LRH said this in Dianetics, so that means that I don't have to do the drug rundown, or that means that I don't need to do grade 2, or that means that violates this grade 3 principle or something because he said this in some Dianetics book, and it's just like they find points where the text sort of clashes, and so they think that means it doesn't work, or like that mean like yeah, or something like that. But I just think it's just like there's no absolutes, so it's just like both are true, pretty much. The old Dianetics book and the new tech 10 years in the future is true as well. So I'll be like, in this situation, I'll be like, well, Captain Bill is right, and the other guy's right as well. You're both right. I mean, that's the truth about this world. Things are just complex. Things aren't just black and white. Anyway. All right, we've got a Scientology joke. Okay. Let's make a postulate that we're going to laugh on this one. All right, you ready? I'm going to postulate big on this one. Oh, my God. I can't find it. Come on. It gives us more time to really believe that this is going to be funny. I'm going to laugh so much at this. All right, you ready? Okay. Did you hear about the Scientologist who lost $50 on a baseball game? He lost another $50 on the replay. Oh. Oh, that made me laugh out loud. All right, at the end, finally I got a natural laugh in there. So technically it did, but that was more me laughing at trying to fake a laugh and force a postulate. But in the end, the postulate came off. I did laugh related to this joke. That was kind of a better joke as well. I'm actually going to give him... It wasn't laugh out loud though, but I'll give him a bit of credit for that. That's it's not too bad, you know. Anyway, it's now time for today's guest interview, part 2 with Mr. Scott Gordon, the former director of the Office of Special Affairs, the very special and interesting part of Scientology, the part where you go down the rabbit hole and you find out some interesting stuff. Yes, Scientology is interesting. The Div 6 stuff, the beginning stuff, and even the grade Div 4 stuff. The more high level stuff's interesting. But you get into the Office of Special Affairs and you go into interesting territory. Very interesting. It's just stuff that everyday people don't get to find out about. And the lucky people out there who get to be CIA officers, they get to, you know, find out that there's a lot more in life. Because if you're just working at a chicken shop, or if you're just working as an accountant or something, you can just go along in this society and just not be aware that there's way more to life. But if you're a CIA officer, or if you're in there working in Office of Special Affairs, you find out that the world doesn't quite function the way you think it does, and that there's so much deeper and epic stuff going on. You find out about actually how to spot a lie, really. You find out that people do shifty things. You find out that, oh, why did that CEO of that corporation die? That was a little bit sus, that little car crash. You know what I mean? Like there's just so much more going on. And if you are on the crazy side, on the paranoid side, you can end up thinking that there's conspiracies everywhere and going crazy. But you're sort of already crazy anyway. But if you're sane, I mean, you can start looking into areas and be like, whoa, there's just so much going on that people don't know about. You know, here in Australia, we had the government roll out this big internet program, and it cost like billions and billions of dollars, and it didn't really improve the internet. And now they've got new technology anyway. So it's just this huge wasting of government money. And of course, that was given to private businesses, private corporations to set up. So all these dudes drive around in these new Telstra vans, because that's a company, and whoever's working in these areas are just raking in the cash. Just like they've just got the biggest contract. It's like saying to McDonald's, here's a contract to make billions and billions of burgers. And McDonald's would just be frothing at the teeth, right? Anyway, so this Telstra country gets the contract by the government to do all this stuff, and at the end of the day, it's barely an improvement on the internet. It's just like, whoa, what an epic waste of money. And you just go, how fucked up is our government? They're taking taxpayers' money, and they're like, it's just such a joke. And that's just the beginning of the rabbit hole. You want to go real deep down there? You want to hear it? You want to hear it? Look into Apollo 20. You want to find out what they really did on the Apollo missions to the moon, and how they were visiting ancient alien sites, and it was all kept secret. You know what I mean? NASA's doing secret moon missions and shit, and it goes even deeper than that. Guess who they hitchhiked a ride to the moon with? The aliens. That's how they damn well got there. They were getting help from aliens, and it seems like, from recent evidence that's come out, that they hitchhiked a ride there in a UFO. Literally, like the aliens helped them get there and stuff. Epic. They were supervising them during the Apollo missions and helping them and stuff. I mean, that's how deep things go. But it all starts with you looking into things further and going, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? Why is the government wasting $55 billion on some stupid internet thing, and it's just a complete joke? I mean, it just goes, the truth goes so, so, so deep, you know? And I say, let's go away. Let's find out the truth. So let's have a listen to this part 2 with Scott Gordon. Chuck on a pot of tea. Let's hear some talk about the world's most interesting and controversial religion, Scientology.
After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble. Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye.
If you study the expanded Dianetics series and you go into the metallosis rundown, you realize that certain metals, especially heavy metals, key in evil purposes.
Wow.
And they're spraying the sky with what? Aluminum and barium.
Yes, heavy metals.
They're injecting you with vaccines that have mercury.
Metals. Yeah.
They've got fluoride in your water. The diesel fumes have lead and other chromium and other heavy metal toxins. People are getting keyed into their evil purposes, and you see them dramatizing it left, right, and center. And whether it's the loony left or it's the radical right, you've got people who are out ethics, who are dramatizing evil intentions. They're committing acts of violence in desperation, and it's not going to help the situation. As you know, it creates more chaos and disorder. And what they're doing is they're sowing the seeds of chaos and disorder by pumping heavy metals in our environment. That keys in beings, and these beings get keyed in on their evil purposes. That's straight out of expanded Dianetics.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I mean, I noticed that the effect of the heavy metals with me personally is that it just weighs me down, and I can't function as well, and I don't do it, but it's more likely to lead me to just sit in front of the TV for 2 hours, out of it, because I'm basically being poisoned. But I mean, what does it say about how it keys in the evil purposes, and what sort of evil purpose would key in? Can you give me some more maths on this?
No, and I'm afraid his metallosis bulletin isn't very big, and it's not very detailed. All it does is point out that wearing metals on the body can create fields that key in case. Okay, so that's what you deal with on the metallosis rundown. I had some help with this. This was a speculation of a leading Scientologist in the early 2000s named Dennis Clark. He was the first Freedom Medal winner. He was the first to point this out, and he taught me this, and I was blown away because it completely indicated to me. And later on, when I studied the Expanded Dianetics series, which I've really gotten into, and that's lost tech, by the way, that's got to be brought back because that's the key to getting into the L's, okay? Yeah, we're going to lose the tech of the L's if we don't have Expanded Dianetics, and we're going to lose the tech of handling evil purposes if we don't have Expanded Dianetics and False Purpose Rundown. But basically, I am kind of extrapolating here. It's more Dennis's theory and my own observations. And the fundamental, though, is the metallosis rundown, pointing out that metal creates these electromagnetic fields that will key things in. And so you can look at EMF radiation and microwave radiation, and then all these metals in our environment, and realize that that is what they're doing. And they may be knowingly doing this as well, because they have a lot more tech than we thought.
Now hold on. So are you saying that if you do lots of detoxing and you're careful about what you consume and expose yourself to, because it's in freaking sunscreen, for Christ's sakes, they've corrupted sunscreen. Sunscreen just keys someone in. You're better off going in the sun without it. So let's say if you do good, like I do Bikram yoga twice a week, which is getting all the toxins out. Because I smell the toxins come out of me. It smells like bleach and chemicals, like full on. I have to do it 2 times a week. Then I go to the steam sauna 1 day a week, right? So I'm getting out the metals out of my system, and then they put out their energy with their advanced technology, and then it doesn't affect me. Is that what you're sort of saying? But if I let myself have all these metals in my body, then they could use the 5G towers, and then that would really affect me, and that would key in evil purposes. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you call it a synergistic effect, especially like with these kids who are getting autism from the injections. They're being exposed to the aluminum and mercury in their vaccines, fluoride in the water, and it has a synergistic effect where when they get in front of cell phones or their little iPads in their kindergartens in first grade, they're getting electromagnetic radiation, and so they're turning out more and more hyperactive, more and more cases of autism. So yes, it's a synergistic, a cumulative effect, just like LRH says about the Pura. We're trying to take that cumulative effect of radiation, but not just that, but toxins, heavy metals, things like that. All of this is N-meth. If you go back to Science of Survival, N-meth attracts N-theta, right? So when you purge your body of N-meth, as in the Pura for doing detox or taking care of your diet, you are minimizing the effect on you. That's true. And people should be doing that, especially in this day and age.
I think you've helped clear out, I think you've helped clear chemtrails for me, because now I'm starting to understand why maybe they're choosing these certain substances to spray in the sky. Like, yes, some of these heavy metals do have a sun-reflecting effect or something like that, and maybe that's their cover, that's why they're doing it to stop global warming or something like that. But it's starting to make sense when you think, hold on a second, why are they spraying it over population centers? Then it gets into the air, people breathe it in, it gets into the food, people eat the food, and then they're able to be controlled by energy towers and the advanced technology, so that they remain obedient citizens. It's starting to make sense to me.
Yeah, really does. It's kind of it's overwhelming, because it's almost like, what can you do about it? But you can first take care of yourself and then educate others. And auditing is the answer. because auditing is what brings people up the awareness levels and makes them more aware and sensitive to these things, and so that they start improving their diets and things like that, and become powerful enough to confront the evil that's behind it, because it takes a lot of confronting.
Now, what about Morgellons? Do you know anything about that?
I would say these kind of diseases and things like that are our body's reaction to these accumulated toxins. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact cause. I'm not a doctor, but I would say we're seeing more and more of these strange diseases that come up as a result of chemtrail. You know, we don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, chemtrails are pumping toxins into the environment, just like you stated. It was a good summary. Yeah, no, this is really good that we got onto the chemtrails after you were talking about the EMP attacks and the energy and the 5G and stuff, because it starts to make sense. You start to see what their plan is for the future. It seems like it's like you got beings and you want them to be obedient, and you control the information that they know, but on top of that, you actually control the state of mind that they're in, so that they won't ever rebel or whatever. And so I think that it keeps people in that state of mind of just like not thinking outside the box, and maybe being in fear or being in depression, so that you're just like a zombie. Yeah, that was the original Nazi goal of putting fluoride into the water of the concentration camps, and then they got it. You know, in Operation Paperclip, the scientists came to America and just put on a PR campaign and blamed it on tooth decay, saying that they were going to fix tooth decay. And there were a lot of special interests that converged, like the coal burning. Coal burning left this fluoride type substance that they couldn't dispose of, but so they said, all right, let's put it in the water. And it solved a problem, an industrial problem, at the same time as it gave the real SPs their inside edge to get fluoride into our bodies, which completely collapses the pineal gland, which is what you use to go exterior in the universe and become a spiritual be a spiritual being outside the body. So a being gets collapsed in their body because they can't take care of the fluoride and process the fluoride that goes to their thyroid gland and destroys it, and it goes up here to the pineal gland, which is where people, the ancient spiritual masters, the Tibetan masters, all knew that you needed a healthy pineal gland to get out of the body. So they're trapping us in bodies. Their basic goal is slavery, and fluoride is a big thing. But going back to earlier things, lead and all the other heavy metals have a synergistic effect. And, you know, even if you don't turn on your evil purposes, you've had a lot of good auditing. You were just saying earlier, it makes you feel lethargic. And you don't get as much done. You're not as productive. You don't go up against the system, because this collapses testosterone in the male body. And testosterone to get that surge of energy when you're being a courageous male and fighting back against these. They don't want courageous males fighting back. They're smashing masculinity into the dust.
Absolutely. They're trying to get rid of masculinity, and they're trying to change the chemicals. They're trying to expose us to chemicals that lower testosterone, because
for the ladies out there, I want to point out that testosterone is the sexual desire. So it's a way of doing eugenics and getting women to no longer breed or have children. So their testosterone levels are critical too. We think of it as a male hormone, but it's for a female, it turns on the sexual desire, and it also, females have their natural defenses, and testosterone is necessary for them to be able to mock up the energy and defense to do the same kind of fight that we males have more of a, let's say, biological imperative to do. That is, you know, males are the defenders, traditionally, but I'm not saying that women can't be. But I am saying the war is not so much on masculinity, but testosterone. Those things that fuel the body's ability to rise up and defend itself.
Wow.
And to get outraged. People are not getting outraged anymore at the things we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because without the outrage, they're just going to roll right over us.
Yeah, it seems like they're in a permanent state of overwhelm that they're just used to, and that's basically a zombie. It's really interesting because I never thought about that women need testosterone as well. I imagine that men need some estrogen and women need some testosterone, but it's just that men have more testosterone and women have more estrogen on average. But yeah, it does seem like they're trying to modify the body and stuff. And I was wondering, could you give me some, like, a mass on like an evil purpose? So let's say you got someone, they're weighed down by heavy metals or something like that, and they have an evil purpose keyed in, but what would that evil purpose be? Like, are you saying that person would sit there and then next minute they'll go and they'll eat someone else's food in the fridge, and like when the person's got their back turned, they'll eat their food and then they'll be like, yeah, stupid bitch. Is that what you're saying? Something like that?
Well, I'll start out with giving you the ultimate evil purpose. The ultimate evil purpose is destroy existence. Okay?
Oh.
And it's a reaction to life and to existence where you're completely, whether for a split second, like when you smash your thumb, or for a long period of time, like a real SP that's on fire, to a psychopath that's on fire to just destroy anyone he can. It's a fundamental ARC break with creation that beings have. Okay? Evil purposes can manifest in many different ways and can have many, many different wordings. But what I would say is it makes young males that wind up in jail, it makes them extremely susceptible to tiny little motivators, and you see this in schools and in gangs and in streets. It's been part of the human race for a long time, but it's just getting worse and worse in this new environment of, trashy food and heavy metals and cultural destruction, where people, you look at for example, and I hate to get into any politics because I'm not political at all, but the whiny social justice warriors, the people who take a motivator at the littlest thing, or you can go look at the right wing, the person that will pack bombs and go in and shoot up a school because somebody was picking on them in class. What we're looking at is over hypersensitivity to motivators, little things, ARC breaks, that the person just goes completely ballistic on what we call the second phenomena, the misunderstood, where you commit overts on the area, you individuate, and all of a sudden that area is your enemy, so you're going to destroy it. So I can't give you like wordings of well, I can. Maybe I can come up with some examples. Like, let's say, I don't want to. I've already picked on the Democrats, so I'm going to pick on the right wing. So a guy decides that the Democrats and the loony left are so evil that they should just be all wiped out and killed. And so he goes to some event or area where those kind of people are hanging out, and he goes and shoots it up. Because he has this evil purpose. People like that must be destroyed. Some wording similar to that. Now, you can get him in Dianetics, and if you know his evil purpose, you can erase it. But really, what you need to do is a purif with the guy. You need to destimulate all the physical toxins that are fueling this rage that this guy is boiling over continually. And that's what you see in a psychopath. And it's a gradient. I'm not saying that heavy metals are going to make a person go into this frenzy in all cases. I'm just saying someone who's already predisposed in their case to hold track violence and evil purposes are going to be keyed in easily this life when you got such an environment where the body is continually re-stimulated. And the body is in rage as well, because the body wants to get rid of this stuff. And the body is saying, this stuff doesn't belong inside my body, and it gets angry as well. So you have people who are boiling over with anger, and that's whatever words they use to express that would be the unique kind of significance to the mass. You know what I'm saying? It's like significance in mass in a clay demo. It doesn't matter a whole lot what the words are to the evil purpose, but the whole significance is it's a burning rage of destroy, because there's no hope. And people lose hope when they get in this environment where the culture's been decimated, the food is trash, GMO, and heavy metals all over the place, poisoning your body, making you sick, giving you migraines, giving you physical pain, which causes you to react against. All of a sudden, the universe is a dangerous place to be, and the universe becomes your enemy. And then you see people joining Satanism with an avowed purpose to destroy anything they can. I'm not saying all satanic cults are like that, but hardcore Satanism is based on the opposition. Even the word shaitan, which is the root word of Satan, is Hebrew for the opposer. A person gets into opposition to existence, and that is key to handling criminality. And LRH hit this, and I don't think he knew to what degree he got this truth. But when you read this HCOB called The Criminal Mind, he says the criminal is in opposition to his own existence. He is protest of his own existence. LRH hit a gold mine right there, because that is the key to handling evil. You've got to get that guy back in valence by getting his grief off, by getting his protest off. He's got to detox his body. And that guy, just like they do when they're doing Criminon in the right way, and they're doing it with the Purif, like they did down in Ensenada in Mexico, you'll get transformations of people because they have hope again. And their bodies feel good to live in, because they're not loaded with toxins and drugs. And you'll key people out of these evil purposes, and they no longer want a war on God and a war on goodness and a war on anything that moves, right? And you got these SPs that are spraying poison all over the planet. They're destroying life. They're destroying the oxygen-giving trees. These are all varieties of evil purpose, and they're all fueled by a protest against existence, because hope has been lost, because there's been so much N theta and operations directed against, contra survival, against survival on this planet, that especially in war zones and in places where the culture's been destroyed, like the hardcore rap in the inner cities and the drugs that have been flooded in these inner cities. You've got gangsters that just want to kill. They're drowning in their own evil purposes. And so, you can't just put them on the meter and say, we're going to run expanded Dianetics. They have to be set up. Ultimately, you can erase those evil purposes, but you've got to stop. It's like ethics has to go in before tech goes in, but also, the Purif has to be done before you can do the bridge. It's like you have to handle the physical being, give the person the assists that they need, the Purif that they need to get them started at all. And that step sometimes is so powerful, as you know, and just the Purif and the objectives can get a person completely back on the right road just from that, because that handles those fundamental things that the being is trapped in.
Yeah. It seems like since 1970, what's changed is that people need much more detox and emphasis on detox. So maybe people need to do their Purif more often, or they need to do their Purif and then do certain things like Bikram yoga and saunas to maintain that toxins don't get back into their body, right? Or take vitamins.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like that you know, the Purif, the objectives, because the objectives relate a lot to like toxins and drugs and that, like poisons. So it's like those, like that, where like in the mid 60s, someone could come along and spend this many hours, but now it's like no, people need to spend 4 times as much hours on handling those 2 initial steps before they can then get into the bridge, because it's like those areas have been attacked heavily.
I would point out that you should never get into overdoing the objectives, because they have, it should be done lightly, like we did in the old days before Miss Cabbage came along and said you've got to do them for hundreds of hours, and that can actually put a being back into the body and get all kinds of control things going on and protest. But I think what you said about the Purif needs, even by people who've done it. I've done the Purif twice, and the second time it ran longer and deeper, and I had tremendous wins. And that's when I realized I was clear. I couldn't see that before I did my second Purif, because I had gotten tossed up again, and 12 years later, okay? And I was able to see the fact that I was clear, and I had the clear cognition just a few months after that.
Interesting.
So, yeah. Doing a second Purif. And I'm overdue for my third Purif. I want to do my third Purif tomorrow, because I know, even though I eat extremely clean, I'm almost vegan, I eat no GMOs, I eat organic, I eat very light, I eat very detox. I really want to do my Purif a third time, and I think we should be doing this on this planet at this time. We should be doing our Purif every few years. I'm serious.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I have a thing with chemicals and my body's ability to detox. I think I've got some sort of aberration. Apparently, I don't produce some enzyme that breaks it down easily. So I have to now do Bikram yoga 2 days a week. But for a long time, I was just doing it 1 day a week. But, I'm not saying everyone needs to do it 2 days a week, but it's just like, I mean, when you smell the towel and the sweat, and it actually smells like chemicals, like a cleaning bleach and shit, it's just like, whoa, I'm obviously absorbing shit in my environment, and I've got to sweat that stuff out. And if I don't do that, then I start getting keyed in and start getting more low toned. But I thought of an example of what an evil purpose would be that could get keyed in, is you might have someone who's a painter, and so then he's working and he's breathing in heavy metals, right, as he's painting, and then maybe that makes him feel more keyed in and low toned. So then he thinks, I'll just do one coat, and he sort of like screws over that customer. Do you see what I mean? He starts doing shifty things like that. Then that's like an evil purpose. So that's how we might see it in the universe. That's how it might get expressed.
That's a good example. What you said is the toxic environment kind of depresses his
ability,
purpose.
his ability to think and his ability to feel good. So he feels bad. So he just thinks, stuff them. I'm just going to skip this thing.
Yeah, he doesn't feel like it. He doesn't feel as energetic or as positive about it because of that. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, something like that. But I mean, anyway, so what about, I'm interested, I don't know who does your CSing, but I'm just interested, let's say you're auditing someone, look, because this is what I've noticed recently. I'm following a little bit the blood type diet, so it's diet that suits my blood type, and if I expose myself to a lot of tomatoes, I start getting body problems because my body is not designed to eat a lot of spaghetti bolognese. So I could be getting audited, and then I would express, I guess, some sort of body problems, and I don't really know if auditing is going to handle that, you know what I mean? It's the fact that I need to actually eat the right food for my blood type, right? So I'm just trying to think from an auditor's point of view and a CS's point of view. Do you come across situations where there's no tech by L. Ron Hubbard specifically on certain things, but you might know something's going on. Like, what do you do? Like, do you just, I don't know,
Well, I have an answer for that. To start with, something that wasn't emphasized very much. The genetic entity was, in the early days, LRH thought of it as inferior and as evil at times. You know, he even has a bulletin where he speculates that the genetic entity is kind of, you know, very selfish and low tone and has evil purposes. But as he went on, he got away from that. He didn't emphasize that much. And when you look at Eastern practices such as yoga and the spiritual masters and the amazing things that they do, the common denominator is they made friends with their body. They're working as partners, okay? You as a spiritual being, and you're taking care of your body, and you're listening to it, and you're in communication with it, and you're giving it the things it needs, and it's giving you the things. If you're in cooperation with your body, which I think you should be, and I think certain practices like martial arts, you mentioned yoga, Tai Chi, things like that, really bring the being and the body into harmony, and that helps a lot of things right there. And yes, you may have to eat for your blood type, you may have to do certain kinds of detox. So addressing the body is important, you know, and it shouldn't, though, overshadow what I'm saying as part two. Part two is I continually observe that when you get auditing, the body follows and gets better. So that's why I'm really into auditing, and I don't have a specific CS. And I don't think you should really Q&A and try to CS for the body, but you continue to do the things that you need to do or want to handle, you know, in a CS program for you spiritually, and the body tends to follow. And especially if your knowledge is good on nutrition and things like that, and you're taking care of it, giving it the things it needs, the body tends to follow. And I wouldn't blame yourself for having like an aberration that you can't process certain things, because the body is struggling with its environment and its genetics. And you can actually help it by just being friends with it. It's just like if you had a favorite horse, you know, you hop on it and ride it, like in the movies, Braveheart, or the movies where you have such a good relationship with your horse, the horse knows where to go and knows when to arrive, right? It's like these beings have their own intelligence, and you should take advantage of that. And your body is like that. Your body is like a horse that will, if you are, and the body even has a sense of ethics. It'll kind of punish you when you're out ethics. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, whenever I expose myself to, I have to have stuff that is healthy for me. Otherwise, I just get like I can't work with paint, for example, because it will just key me in.
Yeah, and the body rejects certain things and says, "No, we can't do that. That's bad for us." You know, it's like, so you have to. It's the body doesn't communicate in words; it communicates in whatever it, you know, feelings and things like that, and maybe even telepathically, just in imagery. But you have to really listen to your body and be a friend to it and communicate to it. That doesn't mean that you're validating the body, which Hubbard said not to do, as being, you know, more important than addressing spiritual things. It just means that grant beingness to that body, be friends with it, and cooperate with it. And that goes a long way, as well as get yourself a lot of auditing, because a lot of what the body is going through, you're putting into it, you know, with your own aberrations. That's true. But, you know, I think you're at a good balance by doing what you're doing, you know, working on yoga and detox and things like that. Of course, you don't mix it directly with auditing, but programs for the body are not a bad idea. People should be taking better care of their bodies.
Well, I've noticed that from my auditing that I get intelligence from that. And then I'm smarter and I'm more able to solve problems in my environment. And that might be that if I eat too much tomatoes, my body doesn't feel good. So it's like auditing indirectly helps me to sort out problems in my environment. It's not like I sit in an auditing chair, I have a cognition, and then suddenly my body feels amazing. I mean, I barely ever had anything like that. Time and time again, it makes me more aware. I have realizations, I have cogs, I'm smarter, just smarter. And then I use that in real life, and then I work out that it's actually things that I'm being exposed to, which is actually keying me in and actually making me have problems.
I think that's a good approach. And if you're a clear and you've done your grades, the next step is FPRD, and FPRD really gets some of the things that you're doing to your body to hold yourself back. And especially on that first basic form and the first dynamic form, that can be a powerful help as well. So, I mean, I'm just talking about your general case level that I understand is like a clear with grades, right?
Like grade 4.
Yeah, exactly. So FPRD the basic form and the first dynamic form goes a long way to helping resolve some of those issues.
But the thing that gets real deep here is that I don't believe, like for example, if I go out in the sun for more than an hour and it's a sunny day, I could get a headache from that. I don't think that's an aberration. I think that's the actual body isn't designed to operate with that level of visible light that's coming through. Maybe it's different in America, but in Australia, where the sun's stronger and stuff. I mean, that's where this game is very complicated in that it's possible that the body is uneven adapted to this environment, not even designed to operate in this environment.
That's true. And what I've noticed about OTs that were successful, even since I've been in the church, is they take a little more care of their body. Their awareness has gone up. They are sensitive to these things. They're more in calm with their body. They notice these things that other people don't. You're noticing your body's reaction to the sun, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's a negative because you have to avoid certain things, but it's like avoiding toxins and bad food. It's like your awareness goes up and your knowledge goes up, and it's like the KRC triangle, which I call knowledge, responsibility, and care, because control shouldn't be up in that area. I think that was the aberration of Scientology. Control got way too much emphasis. Anyway, that's my own thing. But the KRC triangle on the body goes up when you get audited, and it's natural that you're going to notice more things, and that's a good thing. And that means that you can actually correct body situations or help the body correct. The body corrects itself extremely well, but it's sending you messages, and if you're listening to it, it says, no, that's too much sun, let's get out of here. And if you listen to it, it knows so much.
It can know about it. You can like eat into a banana, and you can get knowingness from that. You can get intuition from it, where it's just like, you shouldn't really eat that banana,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to mention this because you were mentioning at the start of the interview about Hubbard during World War II and how it seems like, firstly, I didn't know that he had spent any time in Europe. That's really interesting that you mentioned that. But also, he spent time apparently in Melbourne and Brisbane, which is really, it's just so random. You know what I mean? They're random places. Europe, Melbourne, Brisbane. It's just like he seemed to have been an agent that was doing odd things which agents do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some amazing, completely deep cover operations that, and this is just my theory. There's a book called I, Pedrito that came out in the early 90s. Hubbard had started writing it, and it was an unfinished work, and they hired someone to finish the book. And so it was co-written by Hubbard and somebody else. And it's about a lookalike of L. Ron Hubbard that went to South America as a Nazi agent. I believe it's possible that Hubbard actually did an operation where he posed as a Nazi and really infiltrated their stuff. And I think he spoke fluent German, because you know what his medal was about that Virginia and Mike uncovered?
No.
His Medal of Valor was for getting behind German lines, wearing a German Nazi uniform, and getting critical battle information for D-Day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's coming from good. That's good data source. Is reliable sources.
It's speculation backed by a lot of interesting anecdotal evidence that points to that as what he did, because I can get the link. It's one of Virginia's articles that she spotted in a book about British intelligence where they were training some agents. And it completely matches the description of LRH, how he told stories, how he was a loner redhead, and how he had gotten behind enemy lines. That story comes out in that article.
Wow.
Yeah. And the church has his Medal of Valor for serving in the Atlantic Theater.
Wow.
They just don't say how he earned it. They may not know. Hubbard wasn't supposed to say.
They consider the Atlantic Theater to be Europe?
Yeah, I'm labeling it the Atlantic Theater. I'm sorry, but it's just it's a Medal of Valor earned in the European theater. Yes.
All right. Something interesting you mentioned earlier was about Mission Earth and Vaughn Young helping out with the writing of that. Where'd you get this data from, and who is Vaughn Young?
Vaughn Young was the church PR in the early 80s, and he was part of the Guardian's office, and he was one of the most trusted Guardian's office personnel by Hubbard. And Hubbard recognized his writing ability because he was a great PR. He was a spokesman for the church, and he was really good at writing and very articulate, language. It's like, a super literate kind of a guy. And Hubbard tried out wanted him to ghostwrite parts of Mission Earth because it was such a big project. He wanted another writer helping him. And he liked what Vaughn Young was doing. And Vaughn Young tells that story. You can do a search, Vaughn, Young, Young, and he tells some stories about how he actually ghost wrote the 1983 disconnection reference. And he actually blows the whistle on that, the fact that LRH telex an order to put that together. So, but he may have also written some other HCOPLs or something that Hubbard would have made sure, expressed what he wanted expressed, and he would have signed off on it, much like David Mayo wrote up certain issues and Hubbard signed off on them because they were correct, or Hubbard made his corrections and issued it. So there were different people that issued material under Hubbard's name. Of course, Hubbard looked it over and approved it, and before that, signing off on it. So, but Vaughn Young was definitely involved in the Mission Earth project, and he writes about that in some of his stories of what he went through in the Sea Org.
But how was he involved? Like, what did he do? Did he just edit it and fix up spelling mistakes that Hubbard had written? Or something?
He did a lot of that because he was a final editor for that kind of thing. But he would also write based on an outline that Hubbard would give him. Here, write about this and make the plot go like this. And so he would, read what Hubbard already had going and then continue the flow along the lines of what Hubbard wanted written. And he would actually do the writing, and Hubbard would read it over and approve or disapprove of different sections. And so that got a lot of the writing done so that Hubbard could actually accomplish the 10-volume series, which I agree with you, Andy. It's an awesome series, and it teaches things that you can't find anywhere else in the tech or the
absolutely. In Hubbard's fiction, it's like a whole other side to Scientology. You get data that you just don't get in the Scientology tech, and it's just like it's a big missing piece. To me, it's modern, like modern at the time, like it's just real world data, because the tech is sort of more, it's not as relating to this universe. You know, it doesn't use specific names like J. Edgar Hoover, and it doesn't talk specifically about, you know, how police detectives might plant evidence or something like that. But it's very real world. It's stuff you would imagine that Hubbard would talk to like if he was going to do an interview with Joe Rogan or something. He would talk to Joe Rogan about stuff like that. It's stuff that he would talk to people who aren't Scientologists about.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get mass on how to apply certain Scientology data to the planet, and it's pretty amazing.
Yes, exactly. It gives you mass on data. Like, we'll have a character that's like a certain tone level, and then you get an idea of how they think and what behavior they exhibit and stuff. And yeah, it's great. So, do you know anything about
Here's one thing from Mission Earth that I took away. It's pretty amazing. It was before the time of the global warming thing. Hubbard points out that the issue is not, and he doesn't mention carbon dioxide specifically, but he points out the real issue is oxygen. It's not CO2. This planet will go under when it loses its oxygen level, not when it has too much carbon dioxide. So this whole global warming hoax and climate change thing, Hubbard had some sort of correct view in my estimation, that the problem was we're going to lose our oxygen if we lose enough trees and stuff. And that's a problem that was being solved by, I think, Heller, the hero of, what's his name, Heller?
Jedediah Heller.
Yes. Heller was trying to solve this problem, and he had these particles that released and would make oxygen or something. It was pretty cool because if you think about it, that is the issue. That life needs oxygen, and you know.
Well, maybe. Hold on. Does he talk about the greenhouse effect?
No, he didn't specifically, but his thing is that what it was gonna all boil down to is whether we had enough oxygen, whether we could actually stay on this planet, and that's so true.
But in the book, it does imply, though, that the world's getting hotter, and that's what Jedediah Heller is trying to stop? Is that right?
No, not really. No,
not really?
No. I just kind of imported that whole thing because, you know, now we're all worried about the wrong, you know, it's a complete wrong target.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
We're worried about CO2. Yeah. And yes, there's climate change. I'm not a denier. I'm not saying that the climate's not changing. But weather's also being severely manipulated.
Yeah.
That rabbit hole, I don't want to get into it now, but that's another rabbit hole. And the climate change thing is, you know, the Al Gore thing was a hoax. He put a correlation between data points that was the reverse of the truth. You know, when the planet heats up, you're going to get more carbon dioxide, not the other way around. He got it backwards.
Yeah,
many good scientists have done that, and I know I'm going to be lampooned for being a climate denier, but so what? It's the wrong target. We've got so many other deeper problems than climate change, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's just like, it's such a deep topic because, you know, one thing affects that and another thing affects that, and it's just weird. You know, it's not as simple as saying it's not happening or it is happening. It just doesn't fit into that category. There's weirdness going on, but there's definitely some sort of scam going on in regards to it. I mean, how can you sit there and work out whether or not the climate's changing while people are secretly doing weather manipulation? I mean, that's obviously going to mess with all your results because you just don't know what the hell's going on.
Absolutely.
Do you know anything about time travel?
Well, we know about time travel and Dianetics and Scientology because you can send somebody at any point in time on the time track, and they can be there in their, as a spiritual being, they can be in that place and time anywhere in this universe.
Okay. Now, here's where it's going to get really interesting. What if someone does something when they go back to that time and space? If they do something, will that suddenly make something change in the current reality?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think Hubbard ever thought so either in any way.
But hold on, isn't that kind of how auditing works and how you get rid of aberrations or something? Like you go back, you cognite, and then it can change something in the current body that you're in or something?
Well, yeah, but I think you can misassign causes and effects here if you're not careful, because in present time you can go back and this big overt that you did and as is parts of it, and in present time you feel forgiveness, you feel relief of guilt. I'm not even saying that the other people that were involved wouldn't be affected. They may feel some relief too that they can't quite explain. I think auditing is miraculous, but I don't think that it changes events and remaps reality in that sense. I don't think you can change or remap reality. What has happened, and I don't think it's possible to change it. There's been a lot of science fiction speculation of what would it be like if we did that. But you know what, Andy? Here's my real honest opinion. I think it's it's almost like a holy grail for SPs to try to pretend to themselves that what they did in the past could actually be altered. You know what I'm saying? Their overts are so bad and their regret is so deep in their unconscious that they want for that to be true. But auditing works because the past is stable and we inspect the past, and by inspecting the past, we can change present time conditions and futures because we change the whole direction of our lives when we handle something out of the past.
Oh, wow. Now I sort of get it. So let's say you go back to a time that you adopted an aberration, let's say with eyesight, right? Because this actually happens, and you know it. Someone will literally decide that they don't want to be able to see, and then they have to wear glasses when they were like 7 years old, right? You audit them, you take them back to that moment. Then suddenly in that session, they don't need to wear glasses anymore, right? This can happen.
Yeah.
But that's not an instant of actually changing the matrix, right? Or changing the universe. That's an instant of a person changing themselves right now. Like that isn't changing the past or anything. That isn't like that. Like the person might have done some form of time travel, but they didn't change history. They just changed the present time, which is pretty miraculous. But they changed the present time body so that they don't need to wear glasses. I think I sort of get what you're saying. How this isn't like Marty McFly going and changing the past and then suddenly a photo in the present changing. It's not like that.
Right. And I think this universe is grounded in truth. I mean, the creative force in this universe, the eighth dynamic, is grounded in truth, and truth is defined as time, place, form, and event of what actually happened. And you can look at that and as is it, and all of the negative of that will evaporate. It's just like in self-analysis, you learn that pleasure moments don't erase, but negativity will erase. So, yes, all the negativity can come off all the past. That's what the magic of auditing. And it will redirect your life and redirect even your DNA, I think, will begin to change. Now, I believe in those kind of miracles, Andy, and I've seen them and I've experienced them. So I have no problem with miracles, but I want to also be a little more realistic for some people out there. The typical session, and I want to set this as an expectation, not as a hard postulate that people should adopt and believe in. But the typical session is like, you go back and like your example, you go back and you find something in your childhood and you walk out of session, you don't need glasses. This happened a lot in 1951, so it's a very important point. People threw away their glasses, and a few days later, they needed them again.
Oh.
But their vision had improved. All this is saying is that the physical universe sometimes needs time to transform. And there is a such thing as a miracle where things transform like in a split second. I believe in those. I've seen it happen. But most miraculous results of auditing is like a push in a direction, and the body needs time, or the physical universe needs time to adjust things, and the process is slower. And that can be disappointing to people who are expecting instant results. So I just want to point that out there, that miracles can happen, but also auditing, even when instant miracle doesn't happen, auditing sets things in motion that if you don't get too discouraged and cancel out your win or invalidate it, things begin to change. And this happens a lot. I'm sure it's happened to you a lot. Auditing creates rapid changes, and it also creates these long-term slow changes that you can only get after a certain period of time has elapsed, and you go, oh, wow, that change started with my auditing. And then I think people should write up more of their long-term wins. They don't do that enough.
That's a really good point, yeah.
And then they collapse because a few days later they've lost that ability or that feeling. No. If they keep getting auditing and that aberration straightens out, the physical universe begins to follow, and a year later you can look back and say, hey, that's when I stopped that habit that had been afflicting me for so many years. But I've also had the instant thing. Andy, I walked out of a session early on in my Scientology thing on a sec check, and first sec checks are always the magic ones. I don't think people should do too many of them.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's because that's the thing that people go in. The way the church does is you're bleeding. You're getting blood out of a rock or whatever. It's just like you're not going to get blood out of a rock.
It's painful and it's overrun, and it shouldn't be done, and the objectives shouldn't be overrun either. That's doubly painful. But in my first sec check, I walked out, and Andy, a habit that was just tearing me apart was gone. I had no urge to do it. It was done.
Yeah.
So I've experienced the instant change, and that's awesome when that happens.
Yeah, I experience a lot of the gradual change, the gradual evolving, because we're dealing with beings that are overwhelmed, case-wise. They're overwhelmed, and we're less overwhelming them, a little bit by a little bit by a little bit. Each session, each realization is getting them out of being overburdened, and that's the goal. What about actual physical time travel, like this stuff that maybe the government has?
Well, I've seen that happen. I've never seen any evidence that they're able to tweak or alter some past event. But here's what happened, Andy. There's an Air Force guy who was really into the time travel program, and his videos may still be on YouTube.
Now, is that Project Looking Glass?
It might be.
Okay.
But he was early in on it. He's an old Air Force colonel, and he had really been in on it. And he had seen some miraculous things where, like the Philadelphia experiment, where mest actually goes into a new time slot.
Yes.
But I listened very carefully and very skeptically when he talked about what he thought had altered a past event. And really what had happened is that same being came forward in time and occupied a new body. And he didn't have the vocabulary that we have in Scientology to describe it. So for him, it was an alteration of present time from going back in the past. You know what I'm saying?
No, I can't understand you. Just describe it more.
Well, present time events were not affected by going back in the past. But basically, he had thought that he had changed the future or the present, but really it was the same as auditing. He had they had as is something, and a being appeared in another body, and that had, quote, handled a past event.
I can't get
I'm
it.
sorry that I'm being a little vague, because I'm just saying that what he thought was altering events by going back in the past was really what we understand happens in auditing. Okay, so my answer to that is that I'm not convinced of any evidence where this whole, time loop thing that unfortunately gets a little too much emphasis on the Captain Bill groups. I don't think we do things over and over. I think we do things as a spiral. I think we do the same types of things, and it gives us a sense of deja vu because we're spiraling through this universe. Time is both linear and circular. So when you get that, you get a spiral. And you'll get on a planet and go through the same motions as we're going through, the same development stages as we did on planet Earth, the same civilization. That's why LRH can say, well, on another planet, this civilization looks just like Markab did. That's how those things happen, because history repeats, and the same people even take the same roles or valences, and it's awfully similar, but it's not the same. Okay? And what's critical to remember is auditing relies on straightening out the time track and pulling apparent similarities into differences. And that's where the magic of auditing happens. That's where you differentiate. No, this time is not the same as last time is not the same as last time. All that. I don't even call it A equals A anymore, because really we should be calling it A equals B equals C, because there's three different distinct events, and A equals B equals C equals D. It's all on the same chain. And yes, it happened before in a highly similar way, but when we get differentiation, the time track, and this reference is from 1963. LRH released two of the most powerful references in Scientology. And it was about the new R3R that was coming out for Dianetics, straightening out the time track. And it's where we get our map in the 0 to 8 book, which says the condition of the time track. You remember that as part of 0 to 8? There's a scale of condition of the time track. And what he's talking about in the R3R bulletins of 1963, and he's talking about time, is that the real power of Dianetics is attaining a straightened out time track that's all snarled up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the most powerful things a spiritual being can do is just straighten out that whole track, find all the GPMs on it, all the engrams, everything. And that's ultimately what a real clear OT is a completely straightened out time track that doesn't have these little pockets of black mass that are uninspected, and we don't know what happened there, you see? So it's a really key thing. And I think when the CIA gets into these science fiction programs to make people wonder if time goes in a circle and things like that, they're really gaslighting or messing with people's minds, because the real object is to differentiate, not to collapse it into one circle. Is to pull the spiral out until it's almost a straight line and it doesn't have any aberration on it. That's what a being should be doing with their time track. And that leads me into the future. You know, when we learn from quantum physics that probability of waves are available, this is how psychics see what's going to happen. And this is taught in the Bible, even in the Old Testament. It's like God told the God, so-called, of the Old Testament, told Jonah, you know, gave him a choice, basically, and showed him two futures. And I'm getting a little lost in this, but the basic point was that the future can be seen by prophets, but it can also be changed. So he was basically getting Jonah to change a future outcome by doing something different in present time, because the future could be seen. You can see the probability waves, but until those probability waves collapse as events in present time, there's no truth to that future. It's not absolutely true. It can be changed. And that's the miracle and magic of existence in this universe. And that's why we're beings. And that's why it's so exciting to live in it, is because we can make a difference. Because what we decide, what we do, what we act upon in present time makes different scenarios of the future. And when a being is really being a spiritual being and not just traveling on past instincts and just going with the flow, but actually being cause, that's when the future starts looking brighter, because you do these improvements. And that's what mankind is trying to do, make a better existence. And most of us are basically trying to do that. And we know instinctively that it all depends on what we do in the here and now, how our future is going to be. And LRH even had a R.J. Ron's journal where he said the future could be good for you or not so good. It depends on if you take advantage of the tech. And that might have been ghost written. That might not be actually LRH, because in the 80s, people lost, certainty as to who was putting out what. But it's still an awesome bulletin to read, because it really, I've looked at this deeply, Andy, this thing about time, and any other explanation takes cause away from the being. And that's exactly what the slave masters want to do. They want to convince you that you can't be cause. And the truth is that you are cause and that you create your future. And when we really all get that, we'll create a better future, and we'll take it away from the slave masters, because they control things only because we let them.
Yeah, so they're trying to cover up the truth that you can just create things like that with postulates. That's sort of what
that
you're saying.
Too. Yeah, that too.
They're trying to cover up that they're trying to cover up that we're magical beings. So then they come up with universe explanations as to this is how time works, or this is how the environment works, or something like that. It's saying that Mest is boss and that you aren't magical. Well, the truth is that you're just actually magical and you can change things.
You got it 100%. That's it. And that's their operation. That's the Catholic Church with predestination. God has already decided you're going to hell or heaven and all those things. It's total BS. And it puts you at effect, and it makes you think that, it doesn't matter what I do. But it does matter. When you really do a lot of auditing, you realize that your decisions did matter and you should have done something different. And that messed you up. And when you realize you can change your mind in present time and not do that anymore because you've inspected that old decision, you're all of a sudden a new being, and you can create where you couldn't before.
Wow. So I was thinking with the spiritual time travel thing, like with the auditing. So I was thinking that if you did go back to the incident with the glasses, and then suddenly you can see in present time without glasses, and then you look through photo albums and you never had glasses on, that would indicate that you can change the past and it changes time right, in history, right? But the person in present time no longer having to wear glasses, if they look through photo albums and they see that they were wearing glasses, if they ask people, hey, a year ago was I wearing glasses, and the person says yes, that's a sign that you've changed right here and now, but you haven't actually changed history.
Right.
So it's like,
right.
it's not, so basically it's not like the movie Back to the Future where you make a change and then it actually changes history.
Yeah, yeah. And Mark Passio really researched that, and some other movie was made that he says is far better because it's far more accurate about how past events can't be changed, as far as, that it's going to create a new present. And it's called The Time Machine, I think. It was a remake of an old movie, but the late 90s version, he says, really gets it spot on. So I may have the name of that movie wrong, but it shows that even in Hollywood, they put out some truth, like, the Matrix first movie.
Mm.
And then they had to really make some bad. I didn't like Matrix 2 or 3. It was all right, but Matrix 1 was so awesome.
I know, it was just, it was just the definition of just an incredible movie. So good.
Yeah.
Just so good.
It had bodies in pawn and everything, and that stuff is real.
Yeah. But here's the thing with time and changing history and all this sort of stuff. This is what's weird, is because I believe in the Mandela effect, and that's where the Mandela effect indicates that somebody right now, maybe it's not an instance of time travel, maybe it's instance of somebody controlling the Matrix, but they can punch in a change into the Matrix, and then suddenly that change has occurred. But it doesn't seem to affect our minds. Our minds can still remember the original version, but it can change the history books.
That's an interesting idea, but I would caution that, when we were saying earlier about you being cause, that the whole Mandela effect I see as a possible psyop in which, I know that a lot of people are contributing to it.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as
they're doing CERN and stuff, and they're smashing atoms together, and they've been doing this stuff for like 50 years secretly in bases. They're doing stuff where they're basically being God, and they can affect the messed universe. They've worked out ways of changing the Matrix, I reckon.
Yeah, but I still think that they're changing things in present time, and that are going to alter futures, and not always for the good. Yeah, they're kind of doing a black operation on things. But as far as the Mandela effect, I would take a look at that in the context of, does it make beings cause? Because it tends not to. It tends to say that just by changing your mind in present time, the actual past can be altered. And there are so many people that unconsciously want that to be true, that I think that fuels a lot of the Mandela effect.
I reckon the Mandela effect isn't a time thing. I think the Mandela effect, I think it's exposing that the Matrix really is the Matrix, and it's just codes in a computer. And so you can just change. You know what I mean? Like, as in, you can look at the evidence for the Mandela effect and say, hold on a second, maybe this means that people are jumping into a time machine and going into the past and changing it, right? Or you can conclude that it shows that certain people have worked out how everything's a vibration, and then if you just change the vibration, or if you just punch in that code, it just changes the computer game that we're in. I think it, if anything, exposes that we're in a computer game. But then also it gets even more complex, because the Mandela effect actually seems to be timelines and parallel universes collapsing together. So it could be exposing that people have worked out how to make parallel universes combined. So they've combined our like two parallel universes together, and some people are remembering the other version, and some people are remembering the other one. So actually, I don't think I have any idea what it is. I mean, it's just I think maybe it's blowing the lid off parallel universes.
Possibly. I see the whole universe as a natural cosmic light computer, and, which is really a matrix itself, but it's a natural matrix. It's the quantum physics matrix that we exist in. And planet Earth, I think there are beings that have been using technology, both spiritual, dark arts, sorcery, and a lot of electronics and a lot of energy and a lot of black rituals that involve a lot of violence, you know, the wars on planet Earth, the genocides, all those things. And they are manipulating the space-time fabric locally on planet Earth, which is creating a lot of chaos and confusion.
Wow.
And that makes it an artificial matrix. But I've never believed, and I don't think ever will, that they have total control over that, and that we're actually like just in suits playing a game. That's a really cool idea, but I think real is real, and we are here, you know, being real. But there are elements of the space-time fabric that are inverted on this planet in a really peculiar way that make this a prison planet and make this such a completely... They're trying to flaunt natural law. They're trying to make it so they don't face the consequences of natural law in this universe, or you could call it God, or, you know, God's judgment or whatever. And through things like pedophilia, through satanic ritual abuse, through human sacrifice, through wars, which is mass human sacrifice, they are altering spiritual energies to be able to invert and protect themselves and buy themselves more time to continue doing evil and to turn this place into their kingdom, which, you know, that's going into biblical language, you know, the kingdom of Satan. It's actually a reality on this planet, in this locale. And I think that they do distort the space-time fabric to try to protect themselves from the natural consequences of karma, which is why they've gotten away with it for so long. But I don't think they actually do those kinds of things that the Mandela effect postulates with time. But I think that those things are connected, that our confusion as beings allows things like the Mandela effect to blow our minds, because we're confused as to what cause and effect are, because they're really energetically almost reversing it. They cannot ever flaunt natural law completely, but they can distort the space-time fabric and make this what LRH describes in KSW, which I don't agree with all of KSW, but he says some interesting things, including that our group agreement, which they're enforcing with all this satanic violence against beings, creates a negative energetic field that makes this a hell on Earth, you know. And so LRH said, if you were looking for hell and you found planet Earth, this would serve, and that's absolutely correct. And it's because it's not natural for predators to eat prey. Even the animals on this planet, it's not a natural or good thing if you really think about it. There should not be violence among spiritual beings anywhere, and it shouldn't be required like it is on this planet, where we have a tilting axis that makes people forage so desperately for food that they slay sentient beings, other animals, to get their nutrition. And this planet, logically, was once spinning straight. It was the eternal spring, just like Plato has written about.
Whoa.
The ancient past of this planet. And we are fruit. Our bodies are designed to process fruit and maybe some vegetables.
Whoa. So you're saying back in the Atlantis days, because it seems like there was the huge changes 12,000 years ago where the pole shift happened, and then even after that the moon came in to stabilize things by I think it was maybe the Greys who moved the moon here or something like that to stabilize the environment after the huge cataclysm. But you're saying back then that it was just eternally springtime and you could just grow fruit and stuff all the time, and you didn't have to kill animals to survive or something?
Yeah, because you didn't have these harsh winters where you could not grow anything, and if you hadn't saved up enough food, which most people didn't, because when that cataclysm happened, it was a sudden shock. It was a huge engram to all life on this planet, including us, including mankind, and we broached the ethics of not harming other sentient beings. And, if you look at the Native Americans, they ask the animal if they can have it. And they ask the animal to appear, and they'll be out hunting, and a deer will come wandering by. And the deer is voluntarily giving up their life for the natives to eat, because the natives were in tune with life. And they knew that it was wrong to kill animals, but at the same time, if the animal volunteered, they could kill it and feel okay with it. Because this planet is not a natural state of existence. It's been damaged.
Yeah.
It's been knocked off its axis, and the harsh winters have caused people who live above, 40 degrees latitude to have to eat meat to get through the winters.
Wow.
In general.
Wow, it's really interesting because it's like at the moment I'm in a tropical part of Australia, and it's really nice because it's like the atmosphere's thicker because it's got that humid tropical stuff. So the sun isn't quite as harsh, even though you're at a higher latitude, I think.
Yeah.
And it tends to be sort of like just warm all year round. Like this place. If you where I am right now, if you come here in summertime, it's not really that extreme. It's not like Texas or anything. You come here in wintertime and it's barely cold. Like as in it's so stable, right? And it's very humid and wet and stuff. And so I could see how it's like eternally spring. So I could see how you could have, if there wasn't a tilt in the axis and the Earth wasn't confused by a big cataclysm, you could have large portions of the Earth that are like this, that are just like constantly nice and warm and tropical and stuff. And I think this is why there was a huge deluge, because there was so much more moisture in the air. There wasn't great big deserts back then, and the whole world was like nice subtropical southern Queensland. Like that's literally what it was like for the Atlanteans and stuff. And so they could be outside and not need sunglasses and shit because, there's so much freaking clouds in the sky that are just blocking it. And so then when the cataclysm came, it stuffed up the weather, and then suddenly just all this moisture that was in the air that was blocking the sun and stuff, all that came down. So it was just like, I don't know how long it was for, but it was just so much rain was coming out. And then you get pockets that are still like Queensland, where it's still kept some of that Atlantean weather, but there are huge parts where there's these massive deserts that have just that didn't used to be deserts. And so it made Earth much less livable.
Yeah, exactly. So we live in this set of artificial conditions that is just fraught with violence and predation, and we have a situation in the human race where the predators rise to the top and they prey on people. They're the SPs that make PTSs out of the rest of the planet, if you want to use Scientology terminology. And it creates a hell on earth, and it creates this authoritarian pyramid structure You know what I'm saying? Where we would be living cooperatively, you know, without authorities, but we have to have authorities because authorities are the big bad, you know, predators that win and climb to the top of the pile. And that's what we're faced with on this planet. We're faced with a violent planet that's steeped in criminality, violence, and the people at the top of the pyramid don't mean us well. We're their slaves, or we're expendable, and we'll be killed in wars or genocides or whatever way. You know, like the new Georgia Guidestones say, you know, they want 500 million people on this planet, and that means that a few billion of us have to go, and that's their agenda, and that's creepy. That is the result of a predator, pyramid, authoritarian, artificial society that is based on scarcity, and the scarcity is part of the conditions of this planet that we've for whatever cause, you know, there's many different theories, and we have to, as spiritual beings, get our own ethics in. We have to stop being violent, stop participating in the violence, and turn back on our spiritual abilities, which have been lost. And to do that, we're going to have to really work on, you know, really do a lot of auditing and really cooperate with the body in martial arts or yoga or whatever, and get the body restored in its DNA, because the DNA is what's blocking us from. They've messed up our DNA so badly that we've lost spiritual abilities that can be manifested through a body. So
yeah, and it seems like with these 5G towers, they've got more plans to affect our DNA, because that's one thing that these things, they not only do they put someone in a state of being in fear tone, like what we were saying, or keyed in. I mean, like literally these things can actually change the DNA, like the same as if you have a phone held to your head. I'm sure it's going to mess with the DNA in your brain, the radiation and shit.
Yeah, and they're using GMOs to try to alter genetics too. And the chemtrails may be actually trying an attempt to alter genetics. We don't know for sure. But the bottom line is that we have to help our bodies get through this, help life on this planet get through this, and stop poisoning life on this planet, and stop letting these people poison life on this planet, so that this planet can flourish and prosper as life on the fifth dynamic, as well as we have to get our own ethics in personally, each one of us, and rise above it and become heroes, become people who don't disagree with the status quo. And the status quo is a pyramid authoritarian culture, and that came into Scientology and ruined Scientology too. Hubbard had some great ideas in the beginning. And when, in 1965, he put the org board there, he let that org board become authoritarian. You notice that he explained that the org board was communication lines, and that the communication lines did not have a hierarchy. If we were living in an optimum state with our ethics in, everybody would know what to do and have a hat and wear it in an organization all over the place, and we would not need a leader or a king or a government. We would be a society of clears cooperating. That is the ideal scene when you look at the data series. That is the scene that we could have as spiritual beings if we completely got our ethics in. Because there is no justification for one being to dominate and control another being. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not ethical. It's not right. And we know that instinctively. And yet that's what we're faced with on this planet. It's embedded in the culture, and it's been here for thousands, if not millions. And it's a hard habit to break out of. And if you really want freedom, it has to be with ethics completely in. No more violence against other sentient beings, and no more allowing them to roll over your rights. So Mark Passio describes this as the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and it's a very easy to describe. The divine feminine is do no harm. When you do harm, you get into the overt motivator sequence and you go downhill.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin is do not permit harm. Do not allow. Actually, I should say it better. Defend from harm. It's the sacred masculine. When I say sacred masculine and feminine, I'm not saying boys do this and girls do that. Each one of us is responsible for both poles within us. And if we're males, we may have a little more responsibility for the masculine side. We're supposed to be the defenders, right? Because that's the natural order. And defend from harm means not just defend yourself, but where you see harm going on, you have to put ethics in.
Yeah, and can I also say as well, because people are so tied up in thinking that overts is doing something. Overts is also not doing something when you should be doing something.
There you go. That's the overt of omission, and that comes from that's the other side of it, and that comes from the sacred masculine. Defend from harm. And if you're not defending from harm, if you're letting harm go by, you're committing an overt of omission, and that will do you in just as bad as the other kind of overt.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we're faced with. And we might be able to wrap up on this point, too, because we've been at it a long time. But basically, free Scientology and free philosophy is trying to communicate those two essentials so that people can actually climb out of the mud. And auditing is key. Auditing gives the person a gradient way of restructuring his life and his decisions little by little so that there's less harm being done. I'm not saying become a vegan overnight or go out there and get a gun and be the leading vigilante in your neighborhood. I'm not saying that. I'm saying little by little with auditing and study and getting those two things in your life, as in, take them seriously and do a little by little. On a gradient scale, we're going to start doing less harm and stop harm from happening, stop people from being suppressed. And using auditing, it becomes easy. If you're not using auditing, it's a cold water ice dip, because reality, as LRH says in the conditions, you do the conditions or they're going to hit you in life. Life will put ethics in on you, because that's the way karma works. And so we go through a whole lot of suffering because we're not taking gradient steps away from doing harm and towards putting justice in around us so that we create a safe environment so that we can go free. It's not just Scott Gordon's job, and I'm not trying to be egotistical here, but there's a lot of people working hard on putting ethics in, not just me. And you are too. You are doing so much to put ethics in with you just by doing these podcasts and getting the messages out, that it can't be a few people. Mankind has to come to a quantum, the 100th monkey syndrome. We have to get that millionth auditor made where people understand, we cannot harm each other anymore, and we can't allow these SPs to harm people. Let's take care of business. But we got to get a critical mass of people in the future, and we got to build step by step. As LRH said, it's one person at a time, one auditor. That's why making auditors is so critical, and that's what we're going to be getting into in Free Scientology, is making auditors that can easily get people through these little gradient steps called the grades and called, programs where they can release the negativity enough to go, hey, I'm going to take on some more responsibility. And that's how things were working when there was an ideal scene going on in the church sometimes. It wasn't all bad, where things were being corrected and fixed and going forward and people were doing better. is when those kind of things were happening. Less harm, more defense, intelligent defense, because you actually have become more brilliant, more intelligent through auditing. And you have a, auditing, when sect checking is abused, it takes away people's conscience because it takes away their responsibility for their overts. When auditing is used correctly, people become more sensitive and have more of a conscience. And so we're going to see better things when we get more auditing. And I'm not saying auditing is the only path. There's people out there who goes, well, we don't want the church again, or we don't want Scientology. Auditing is just one of the most pleasant ways of traveling spiritual gain. It's almost painless if you do it right. If you really put your ethics in and do it ethically and do it right, it's almost painless because you're not faced with these heavy life situations that are natural consequences when you have blind spots and you don't know that you don't have your ethics in like you should. So that's what we got to do.
And it might seem a bit negative in that what we're talking about, but the real truth is that we're actually talking about the truth, and the fact that attention is being put on these things and we're becoming aware of them and other people are becoming aware of them is actually a sign that things are actually getting better, and that there definitely is a mass awakening going on. I'm certain of it. It's not like suddenly, the skies are going to stop being sprayed or something tomorrow, but it's just like things are heading in the right direction, and it's a matter of, do you want to join in and do you want to start becoming a part of the movement, because things are heading that way anyway, and you might as well contribute to it and make it come about as fast as possible anyway.
Yeah, are you being part of the problem, or are you going to be part of the solution? Because our fourth dynamic is in critical. We're at a critical juncture. If they get the control grid in on us in the next decade or two, we're done. It's game over. It's not totally game over because we know we're eternal beings and we're going to start over again. But it's a pain to start over again. It's really bad because, it takes literally thousands of years to recover civilization. And even though there's a lot of these aspects of civilization that should be wiped, and sometimes I think, man, it would just be better to start over because our culture is so decimated. But you can't think that way. You just got to push, because people can change and minds can be changed. And I'm not saying auditing is the only thing, because if you teach people these things, sometimes they just get it and they decide, just like the way to happiness. Sometimes people just decide to be moral after reading those because they sound like good ideas, and you appeal to their common sense. And they go, hey, this is not a bad idea, why not just do this? And so, I'm not saying the way to happiness is the greatest thing, or works 100% of the time, but different people have different entrance points into becoming part of the solution instead of remaining part of the problem.
And also we have to look at it from the point of view of maybe not expect an all-out victory, maybe not expect to clear the planet or something like that. Just expect to bring a little good, or to have a little bit of impact, or save just one person. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like you've got a whole factory that's dark, but all you have to do is light a light in one corner, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to have all the lights switched on in the factory. You don't have to have candles all over the whole factory and have that whole place bright. If you just have a candle going here and a candle going there, they're the victories, because the people who do want to awaken, they can go to those candles, and that's all that matters. You know what I mean? So maybe the whole factory is going to burn down, maybe. But as long as a few people get out the doors of the factory, that's all that really matters, because I think when you look at the the game and how big it is, and to get victory, you know, it's just like it's overwhelming because you think it's not possible. You know, like someone might be trying to clear the planet or something, and it's just like it's too big a dream. It's just like no, that might not be the actual. That might not be what you really should be going for. What you should just be going for is to just make a little impact, and maybe that's all you're ever going to achieve. But as long as you've done something good.
I totally agree. You know, touch people's lives with a good example, set a good example. Teach people things that they need to know. Teach people what's going on in this planet at a gradient level that they can get and feel like they can do something themselves. And it just begins to snowball, and a lot of people can be helped. And that's what it's all about. That's what that's why the help rundown and the help processes are so powerful. It really comes down to help. And you made a good point. If you can help a few people, you'll feel better, you'll change their lives, and they'll go on, and it's like pay it forward. They'll go on and help some people, and that's how it will be done.
Yeah, well
really.
Because the thing is that with me personally, the whole idea of people having a mission and that sort of stuff, and me having a mission, some people might have to face the facts that your mission might not be to save the earth. It might just be to open up a little door and have a few people go out that little door and have a few people just affected. But that was your whole point. You know, that's all you needed to do. You know, like the factory example, it's like, you know, you weren't really necessarily supposed to stop that factory from stuffing up or have the whole factory lit up in light so you can see the truth. No. All you were really supposed to do is just have a candle in the corner, and some people come to that corner and they get help from that. You know, and so and that's actually the end game. That's actually the end game, you know.
Great point. That's what it's about.
So you mentioned the moon. My studies about that is that it came here after the great catastrophe that wiped out the Atlanteans. Have you noticed a similar thing?
I don't know much about that. I've heard some of the things that, you know, David Icke has said about it in passing. It does seem like a strange artificial satellite is spinning at the exact, you know, so that we always see only one side of it. It's very interesting. I would like to learn more about it, but I don't have any comment because I don't know much.
All right. Well, that's all I want to know because it was really I had to review a lot of data, and I had to look into so much about our history to work out, you know, how the Atlanteans got wiped out about 12,000 years ago, and then to work out how it seems like the moon then came in, and it probably was brought here by certain beings to stabilize the Earth, and also for ulterior purposes as well. And then it's possible they were contributing to the pyramids being built and stuff like that, and obviously some of the Atlanteans survived. But anyway, it's a whole long story. But I think that's it for this podcast. It's been a pretty long one.
Yeah.
Been
a good one.
Yeah. I still wanted to ask you, probably take 40 minutes or something, but I still want to ask you about recent thingos and to do with the Arnie Lerma and the McClurys and the Facebook and OSA and all this sort of stuff. Do you want to do another one?
Like a future interview on that?
Yeah, like one in like a few weeks' time about more what's happened since I interviewed you last, and the Troika, and who are the OSA trolls, and interesting stories about, you know, attacks you've been getting. Yeah,
and in a way, I'm kind of glad we covered what we covered, because I want people to get that I'm not just about
conspiracies.
I really don't want to be doing this intelligence, flushing out all these operatives and stuff, but it's got to be done by somebody, and it's got to be done before we can really get on, because it's like a held down 7 in our field, where certain things have been covert and holding back the field from uniting, from trust, because these operations, the common denominator of these operations is they undermine and destroy trust, because people have other agendas out there, including some very harmful agendas and anti-auditing agendas. And I'm not cool with that at all, because there's nothing wrong with auditing. It's not hypnosis. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's two consenting adults, usually, sitting across from each other. One person's job is to be the listener. I mean, that's the simplicity of auditing. And when you get people attacking auditing and saying that's what, ruins everything, that's going too far. And the Leah Remini show has come to the brink of that. They haven't quite crossed that line. And they went on to other things. They went on to attack, Jehovah's Witness and things like that, because they ran out of ammunition on Scientology. They had, just like Marty said, they used all the old stories. They rehashed them. They invented that David Miscavige's wife was missing and her whereabouts were unknown, just to make a show. So they went they went overboard, but they couldn't really smash auditing in one show, and maybe to their credit they didn't want to, but that's how bad it got. The untruth and the distortions were so bad that you have this group of attackers around Tony Ortega that anything Scientology is evil and bad, and we should be ashamed to even be talking about it or practicing it. So in a nutshell, I'm going to make a nutshell, and then if you want to get an expanded interview, we can do an expanded interview in the future, near future, if you want. But in a nutshell, I just wanted to say that the common denominator of Mike and Virginia McLaury's work, Arnie Lerma's work, and even Jerry Armstrong, and even Marty Rathbun, is beginning to uncover that Scientology is deeply involved with strong vested interests, and has been for a long, long time, maybe since its very beginning.
Like MK Ultra had cells operating in the 70s at Flag.
Yeah, things like that. Things that are mind-blowing that I don't even want to believe or hear about, because I've heard enough. And we lost Arnie Lerma last year, and the circumstances surrounding his death were so distorted and so falsified and so contrary facts that the official story cannot be believed anymore. I have made a website just to state the facts and put them on a timeline. I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me right now. I'll get into it later when we do an extended interview. But I just wanted to point out that if you think Scientology was just some brilliant man that just came on the scene and wrote this great book and that was it, and LRH even said that the story of Scientology is simple. A guy came up with good ideas. But unfortunately, he wasn't telling all at that time either. Scientology is a very complicated amalgamation, meaning a complexity of a lot of old technologies that came together and that so inspired the field that repetitive processing was born. And the powers that be that put Scientology here didn't count on repetitive processing. That was a surprise. And that opened up what we now have as the grades, and the whole bridge is all based on repetitive processing. And that was a spin-off of Dianetics. It wasn't intended. It wasn't discovered by the SPs. It was discovered by field auditors like Jack Horner. And LRH immediately saw the value in it, and he began developing it. And, of course, he became the top CS because he knew the mind well already from his study of Dianetics. Anyway, the bottom line is there's so much more to Scientology than what people will admit and what this controlled opposition will never admit to, because it would ruin their game. And the game is being played on both sides. The Remini shows made millions of dollars. Scientology under David Miscavige, it takes in millions of dollars. So it's not going away tomorrow. You can't take Scientology out by taking its tax exemption, and that would be stupid. And if you take its exemption, you got to take all the corrupt religions on this planet and take away their tax exemption. And I wouldn't mind that, you know. I wouldn't mind if the governments were dismantled tomorrow, because governments, intelligence agencies, and religions all have been used. All of them, not an exception. All have been used to enslave us on this planet. And we've got to wake up. And we've got a lot of work to do. And in a future show, I will go into the things that Arnie told me to tell people if he ever got taken out.
Okay.
Some of those things are appearing on the website, and some of those things are not up yet because I haven't had time. I've been dealing with so many things.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do another one, right? And because I can't seem to get an interview with the McClarys, so, and obviously Arnie's not around, so I kind of want the next interview to be about these current issues, and I want these to be almost like a substitute interview where I'm picking their brains by picking your brains.
That's fine, because I've really delved into their research and read a lot of their stuff, so I can give the summary, you know.
Yeah.
And I can also give the summary of what Arnie was trying to communicate and why he was unique and why he came to the same conclusions from a completely different direction.
Interesting.
Of how many different, you know, outside forces have been working with Scientology for so long.
Wow.
So,
yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking forward to, we'll do it in a few weeks' time or something like that. And thanks for that, Scott. That was a really good interview.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And I'm really glad we got into the philosophy and some of the things that are going on the planet on a bigger view, because it will help, you know, set the context for why they're doing the things that they're doing. Why did they infiltrate Scientology and put it there? And what did Hubbard do as a rogue agent in actually getting auditing and turning against them, you know, as much as he could get away with, and run away with the rebel religion he said he was doing in the first place, but really may not have meant it at first. But once he got the auditing, he turned, and they didn't like that, and they punished him. They punished him brutally for turning on them. So we'll talk about that in the future. But, you know, I'm still into Scientology. There's so much good in it. I recognize what's bad about it, the control stuff, the manipulation, the fair game, the disconnection. None of that is okay with me. We've got to change that. We've got to purge the subject of those things, and I think we can do it. But we have to know our history, or we're doomed to repeat it. You know what I mean? We really got to confront this on both sides. The anti-Scientologists have to be willing to accept that there's some good in it, and that we need it in many ways as a human race. And the staunch Hubbard Scientologists have to accept that Hubbard was not all he was cracked up to be, and it doesn't lose the tech for us. It's like the principle in Science of Survival is you can erase the bad and the pleasure moments don't erase. We're not going to lose the good in Scientology by confronting the evil that's in it, okay? We're just not. And all it takes is some confront, because we're not going to go forward if we don't really confront what's happened, where we are at. If we don't know where we're at, we're not going to go forward successfully. And I want to see people in mass quantities coming together and helping people and teaching people this tech, because there are a lot of good things in it. And it doesn't have to have control factors and reverse Scientology and manipulation and broken dreams and all the things that have littered the field with broken, you know, ARC broken public, as we would say in Scientology terms, or just with mad people that have every right to be mad about what they thought they were getting and didn't get.
Well, I mean,
it's a challenge. a big challenge.
Well, after listening to the audiobook of Mission Earth a few times, and I'm up to like the second book of now in reading it. I mean, I'm so impressed with Hubbard. I mean, I think it, you know, I do crack him up to just be through the roof. I mean, I'm so impressed with his knowledge and what he knew about how the world and how things operate, that it's just like the church members who haven't read this sort of stuff, or they read it but didn't really understand how much of that data was true in that book, in those books. I think that the church members, they think that Hubbard is like the most amazing thing ever, but I don't think they really know how amazing he is and how much he really knew. And so it's kind of interesting, because it's just like, it's almost like they've been brainwashed to think he's amazing. And I think they're actually right in that they think he's amazing, but they don't really understand how he's amazing. Anyway.
Right. And they, have to confront the hidden agendas that were at work. It was declared to be an agenda-free subject, but that wasn't true. And a lot of bad and evil things happened, and they originated some from Hubbard, and we have to confront that too. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he was brilliant and he knew his stuff. And we shouldn't trash it, because it is knowledge that we need, and we wouldn't have otherwise if he hadn't started the unique game of pointing out that it takes a listener, a good listener, an auditor, to get somebody through their stuff, their issues, whatever you want to call it, so that they can be a stable, productive person. And if they become also a good person as well and take up good causes, that's the only thing that will turn this planet around. And I'm not saying it's only going to be done through auditing, but it's going to contribute to that. And it's something that we need really badly, is a technology of confronting our deepest issues, because we all have them. And we're all susceptible to going off the deep end, to insanities, to despicable acts in times of war and stress, because we carry these aberrations forward, and we need a way of confronting them. And Hubbard maybe didn't perfect it, but he put something there that can be used for that end, and can be used for good purposes, and can help people.
I just want to give people a little bit of maths, because it's really important for them to understand things and have comparable magnitude data. But when I'm saying Hubbard is a genius, and with Mission Earth how he's a genius, it's because, for example, he talks about how there's in the story there's a mountain that the aliens are using, and the top of the mountain has been cut off, and they project like a hologram of a mountain, so people who are far away just see a mountain, but then they can just fly into it with their UFO. Now, that's the actual truth. That's how they hide alien bases here on Earth. Hubbard has mentioned how he knows that there's alien installations here on Earth. I mean, he's mentioned this stuff. This is where I'm saying he's a full-blown genius, and he knew about this stuff all the way back then in the early 80s, right? That's where I'm saying that these people, the church members who are brainwashed, they really, really like Hubbard, but they don't even know how much of a genius Hubbard is, and they can read his fiction books and have no idea that what they're reading is actually data that's actually true about the Earth, and it just goes over their head, and they're just like, oh, this is a funny story or whatever. They don't know how deep the story is. But anyway, we've got to end this up, so I just want to ask you, is there anything you would like to say or ask before I end this interview?
Well, no, I thank you for doing this work, because it's so needed. We need it. It allows a communication throughout the field of concepts that otherwise, it would take years to write these books. But we can communicate these ideas and get people thinking and get people oriented towards solving these problems, because we have a problem with expansion in the field. We have a divided, fragmented field. And I take responsibility for that. And I know there are people out there that dislike me or that think I've been a force for some chaos and antagonism. And I understand that. That's not my intention, ultimately, because when you're defending truth and you're fighting for truth, it doesn't justify overts, but it justifies a little bit of making noise and stepping on toes and sacred cows. And people are going to have to let go of these sacred cows because they're going to be slain. And it can be painful or it can be easy. And none of the stuff that I know is beyond the reach of people to do their own research. A lot of people depend, I know, are busy supporting families and things like that, and I understand that. And I make it my life's work to try to help fix this mess that has incredible potential, if we can get out of this mess, to really create some ideal scenes that are worth fighting for and living for. So I really appreciate the opportunity to get this across, and I want to just say to people that my intention is to unify the field ultimately and to come out of this mess as a team, as veterans of the war, as enlightened people who know what it's going to take. And I hope to inspire some people to do more of this kind of thing too, because we need more people. We need more people looking, pulling these strings and looking under rocks and finding the truth of, because we've been just demolished by the slave masters on this planet. The false data.
Yeah, so much false data.
The destruction. And we're really literally just coming out of these engrams. And third dynamic engram, and you audit it with truth. And if anything I say, people have a better truth or a better explanation, I'm open to that. And I hope that people will contact me and enlighten me further if I'm wrong on some of these things. But I'm just communicating what I feel to be true based on a lot of data. That's my strength personally, is that I've been able to go through tons and tons of data because I'm basically a super literate, a natural super literate. When I was 2.5 years old, I was spelling and reading.
Wow.
So I came into this life a super literate. I got dumbed down in school. I had to do my method 1 and word clearing and get back to, but I am back in the data series. I've used the data series and the logics, and I've gone through tons of data, both on my post when I was in the church and now in my studies. And I try to use that talent to forward new perceptions of patterns and truths that I hope that will help people to just look, just audit it. The strength of auditing is you tell people where to look and they see for themselves. And third dynamic auditing is no different. I'm just telling people where to look for yourself, see if it's true for you. And don't just be, true for you. Try to get the objective truth, really connect some dots and look at some patterns. But, I hope I can make my contribution to reviving and rebooting Scientology in the way that it should be done, ethically, with no coercion and with no misuse of control. Where people can come to enlightenment at their own speed and their own pace. And that's the only true enlightenment. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. And that's all I have to say.
Sweet. Yeah. And I just want to say that I'm not concerned about the New World Order, and I'm not concerned about, because we touched on so many negative things. But overall, I have no doubt that things are getting better. The awakening is happening right now. It's just that how long do you want the awakening to happen? You know what I mean? We can have this really slow, and we can have SPs have more attacks on us, and we can get harmed more and slowly awake, or we can awaken faster. And so, it's happening. I've no doubt, and I reckon you get what you postulate, what you really believe actually occurs, and so that we can, our own postulates can affect whether or not the New World Order occurs or not. And I believe it's not happening, and it's not going to happen. But the reason why we're talking about these things is to help the awakening occur faster and things to get better faster, so it's not drawn out. So this war isn't drawn out. We want it to be over pretty quickly, and also mainly just so that it's a smooth progression, because we're talking about a societal evolution. You know what I mean? We're talking about a mass awakening, and we don't want people sitting around thinking that they're going crazy because they're having spiritual experiences, and we don't want it to be a bumpy ride. And this podcast, and there are tons of other information on the internet, that's all there to assist in the awakening. So it's a smooth, gradual evolution to a higher level of consciousness, and it's going to happen. It's locked in the bag. Someone listening to this can go and do nothing, and it doesn't matter. The mass awakening is still going to happen. There can be some indie organ that can close down tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Overall, the awakening's still happening. You can't fight it. It's inevitable. There's too much good. You know what I mean? But what we can do is we can make it happen faster, and we can make the progression smoother and more entertaining, because I know that when you've got a being that doesn't know what's going on and they have some unusual spiritual phenomena occur, they might start thinking they're going crazy. You know what I mean? And so, and when you got someone who's maybe noticing, let's say, the spraying that's going on in the sky, they might start to think, well, maybe I'm just crazy having this conspiracy theory or something. You know what I mean? And so we're here to smooth this all out and not let people, have a rough time evolving to a new level. You know what I mean? Let them progress slowly and smoothly and become a new being, because it's a big thing to confront being a slave that's trapped, right, and then becoming an OT. It's a big thing. You can't just do it in one day, otherwise the person freaks out, and it's too much to confront. You know what I mean? You slowly progress into becoming an OT, and it's actually scary. It's actually scary, like stepping out. Maybe some people have experienced this when they exteriorize. They go, oh, and they go back into their body or something because it freaks them out. But it's a scary thing to confront. Like if someone has to confront, for example, their backtrack, and they have to confront that they're an alien. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a scary thing for someone to confront. But it's the truth. Yeah. It's what's going on in the game. And all the people who are contributing to this movement, this mass awakening, we're all just helping someone. We're all helping people, evolve into being OT and not have a rough time of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said.
Wow. Yeah. No, I just want to get that across, because I know someone will be listening to this and they'll think, why are these guys postulating this bad future? Why are these guys being so negative? And I'm trying to say, no. I know for sure that I'm not postulating a bad future. And the only reason we're talking about negative things is because we're trying to just make people aware of what's going on so that they can smoothly progress out of this.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, sick. All right. It was good talking to you, Scott, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Andy. Take care.
That's all right. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Wow. So I hope you like that. I mean, that's wild. I mean, Scott was talking about the heavy metal thing and it leading to people acting evil. I know it sounds so ridiculous, but like from someone who doesn't know anything about the world, which is the majority of the population, really. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm just being honest. And skeptics really don't know anything about the world because they're so stubborn. They're not open to new ideas, so they just never learn. But like, I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot of evidence for this. I mean, you know, you just see someone who's had like a heavy long-term drug use, and not one of the good drugs I was mentioning to you about, like the South American, like hallucinogenics, which they've been using for thousands of years as a part of spiritual ceremonies. And when people take them, they have out-of-body experiences, and they might have other things, and they have massive realizations, and they'll like talk to God and shit. And like, you know, they're different after it. And they also report that if someone does it who is like a bad drug addict, after that they're like healed, and they don't need drugs again. Right? So it like cures alcoholics and like marijuana addictions, it cures and stuff. So it seems to be there's different types of drugs. You see what I mean? I'm just not one of those stubborn people that just say all drugs are bad. No, I don't believe that at all. Anyway, you look at somebody who's been smoking lots of ice, because ice is one of these bad drugs, and you know, they show signs of split personality and stuff like that. And it's like, what's split personality? It might be this whole entity thing, and you know, it might be anyway. What I'm trying to say is that, you know, I can't be bothered going into it, but I'm telling you, I know it's when you first hear it and you don't know anything about the world, what Scott said about the evil purposes things and the heavy metals thing, it sounds kind of silly, but it's just like, no, there's full-blown all this evidence of what he's talking about. Like, and maybe the words he chose makes it seem a little bit ridiculous, you know what I mean? But if you use scientific words and you tone it down a little bit, you can present what the idea that he's trying to get across. You could present that in a way that skeptics won't have a hernia when they hear it, and they'll be like, "Oh, that sounds reasonable." Do you know what I mean? So I just want to say that, because what he said was kind of similar to what Alex Jones does, where Alex Jones just says the truth and he exaggerates it a little bit, and he uses colorful language. So when you hear him, you're like, what the hell is he talking about, vampires? Like, what that sounds crazy. But you're just like, no. He's not talking about Count Dracula drinking people's blood and like a silly vampire. Like, he means people who are like leeching off other people. Do you see what I mean? He's using the definition in a different way. But you hear him talk about vampires, and if you're a moron who has no idea about the world, you think that he believes in like Count Dracula's, and it's just like you just get so confused by it. Like, and that's why lefties can't follow along with what Alex Jones is talking about, because they're just like, he's so wacky. But it's just like, no, you can't interpret what he's saying. And L. Ron Hubbard does this a bit as well. Like, people can't interpret what the person's saying because they use colorful language and stuff, and it's just like, no, it's actually not ridiculous. Okay, there's all this evidence for it. Anyway, and speaking of the whole drug topic, it's funny that I mentioned it before the interview. Synchronicity, right? It happens all the time. But, yeah, it seems like there are different types of drugs, and some drugs are heavy metal. And if I'm exposed to it, I know when it's a heavy metal. I mean, I get a headache, like, straight away. I mean, I feel keyed in. I feel bad. I don't get anything, any sort of nice feelings or any sort of goodness from it. Like, you know, it's just that, you know, it seems like what I'm trying to say is, it seems like on Earth, what the average person has, their definition for drug, has things in there that I actually don't think, from my investigations, I don't think they should be included. Like magic mushrooms, I don't think they should be included as drugs. And ayahuasca, I don't think that should be included as drugs. I think they're possible actual medicines. Like, apparently they've tested with magic mushrooms. It's cured people's depression and stuff. Now, that's something that psychs, in an ideal world, should actually be giving their patients. This is the actual medication. You know, this really is the antidepressant. You know what I mean? But when you go and you see what they're selling, the big pharma are selling with their antidepressants, they're not antidepressants. That's a fake definition. They're fake drugs. They're fake medicine. They don't cure someone's depression. They work like only 25% of the time. They sometimes make someone feel a bit better, and they mask, but they're not really effective. Most people just makes them yawn. And also long-term use, they're very bad and they're addictive. That's why the drug companies use them. Do you see what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is that it seems like there are actually drugs out there that shouldn't even really be called drugs. They should be called medicines. And there's medicines out there that shouldn't be called medicines. They should be called drugs. I mean, we live in a batshit crazy world. The SPs have taken over and they do outrageous shit. Like, for example, they take advantage of someone who's a heroin addict, right? And they go and they give them like methadone or some other drug. I don't know if it's Xanax or something else. But that drug is actually more addictive than heroin, and that is actually more destructive than heroin. But they trick them and they say, this will help you get off your thingos, and they go, here, now take our thing. So then next minute the person's not a dirty drug addict, they're a person that needs medicine. And for the rest of their life they need medicine. And so it's like, if you're not switched on to what's going on, you will see that person and you'll see them take medicine and you won't think anything of it. You're like, oh, they're just taking medicine. They're just going to doctors and getting medicine. But you see someone else jacking themselves with heroin and you're like, oh, that person's really bad. Oh my God, it's so bad. It's just like, you can't see the difference. I mean, they're both just as bad. If anything, the medical drugs are worse. Anyway, so it seems like the definition of drug has included in it things that probably shouldn't be included in it. You know, and apparently I was listening to someone talk about something in jail on YouTube, and it's really interesting, the guy's experience, because he was telling me how I think that if you're caught with mushrooms, it's rated worse than like murder. The maximum sentence you can get is very, very high. Like, they treat it very extremely high. And it's just like, that would make sense. If people are getting spiritual experiences from this, if these substances are waking people out of the matrix, then of course the powers that be would make those really illegal. You know what I mean? And also, it's not just, I also feel it's like, when it comes to the cocaines and the marijuana and the heroin and stuff, I mean, they're the drugs that they can make money off and that they're selling and stuff, and they basically, they make it illegal, but they actually want people to do it. They're only making it legal so they can cut out their competition, right? But with mushrooms, it seems like there's not like a mushroom trade. People don't get addicted to them. The hallucinogenics, people don't get addicted to them. They're not addictive things. But the ice, the heroin, the cocaine, these things are addictive. They keep on giving their money over to get them, right? So I can see from the powers that be point of view, in that they're like, no, we actually really want to make mushrooms illegal. We actually really want to stop people from doing them. But cocaine, we just make it illegal so that, like, we can take out our competition and stuff, but we actually want people doing it, basically. So the whole situation's crazy, but it was funny, this thing I was listening to from this guy, because he was saying how, you know, he got caught with some mushrooms in his car, and how, like, he was getting treated pretty seriously by the police and stuff, like more serious than murder, and he was in jail, and he was saying how the jails are just full of drugs and even guns. You can get guns. I mean, all the prison guards was just all like bribable. I'm not going to say every single one of them, but he was saying a lot of them. It's just so ridiculous when you really know the truth. So you're in prison, right? And people are getting heroin, there's any type of drug, and really good quality. But of course, it was much more expensive because you're in the jail, and that's why the prison guards. That's because the prison guards are getting their cut. But it's so backwards, and it's just so silly, the whole system, you know, because it was just like, I mean, these are the people these are a part of our justice system, and they're the ones who are supposed to be catching the drug addicts and stopping the drugs and all this stuff, but they're all the ones dealing it, and it's such a joke, you know. Anyway, yeah, so I hope you like that interview with Scott Gordon. It's now time to end off the podcast, but before I end off, I've got to end off with an LRH quote, and this one is super short but super good. You ready? This is from the Data series, because I'm studying it, you know, I picked it out, pulled it out. Me and my twin, who I mentioned earlier, were studying it online. It's very handy. I'm going to make a video in the future where I actually show how I study it online. Like, I'm going to show you my computer screen and my setup and everything. Because I'm going to show you it's quite possible and quite easy, and it's actually pretty good. And when you get smarter and more OT and more knowledgeable, you get to the point where you sort of know more than the soup anyway, and you just go into the soup to get an opinion and just to see what they think. And you can definitely go and do it at home yourself. But anyway, when you're at home, even if you haven't reached that level where you don't need much help, you can get access to the soups because it's all online. He's set it up. What is it called? The Advanced Organization of the Great Plains online courses. You can punch in messages and you can communicate with the soups. So it's not like you're left alone. Anyway, this quote from Data Series 8. It's about sanity, and it says, "An observer has to be sane to sanely observe." I mean, that's just so true. I know it just sounds like it's just so batshit simple. It's just like, yeah, that's how it is. Because a lot of the time we have people who are observing things and saying their opinion, but the thing is that they're not sane. And people don't know this. People don't know about sanity. And that's one epic thing that Scientology teaches people about the world. Is it enables it. One thing you discover is that there's a lot of insane people. And that's what you work out in a data evaluators course. And it's not like bad insane, like they're banging their head against the wall or they're like one of these bad drug addicts I'm talking about. But they're just, they can't see reality. An observer has to be sane to sanely observe. And they're going around saying advice. You go into a shop, you ask about cameras. They're telling you their observations about cameras. They're telling you their opinion about cameras, but they're not really sane, so they're not sanely observing. So they give you bad advice about cameras. You know what I mean? And I just know about this quote so perfectly because something recent happened to me where somebody me and someone else were looking at something, and the person couldn't see what I could see. I could sanely observe. They couldn't. We were comparing two things, and they were like saying that they're the same. And I was like, no, there's a difference. I can see the difference, you know. And he was like, no, they're the same. See, he wasn't sane. If he was sane, he could see the difference between the two things we're looking at. I could see the difference. And so I thought, Jesus Christ, no wonder why his opinion of this whole thing, well, he didn't really have much of opinion, but it's just like, no wonder why he didn't really have much of opinion, because he couldn't do an investigation on this thing and give a result back because he couldn't see the difference between these two things. Right? I could see the difference. So then I could do an investigation, and my investigation has come back, it's most likely blah, 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 blah. I haven't finished the investigation, but I can at least have some sort of opinion that's worth hearing about this thing we're looking at. Right? This other person doesn't really have an opinion worth looking at because he can't even see the difference between two things that are different. Like, he sees them as being the same. So it's just like, whoa. So that's what I'm saying. When you go to this person to ask them advice about this, when you go to a psychologist to ask them advice about this, when you go to some biology expert to ask them advice about that, they can't see the difference between two things. They could have the same thing going on as this situation I'm just talking about, but in another area to do with biology. So their advice on biology is just shit. You know what I mean? Like, they're not sane. They're not sane. And that's the problem with people here on Earth. The shit that's going on here on planet Earth, with this drug dealing going on in jails, with Scientology being infiltrated and taken over, with the Trump rubbish where they're saying that Russia, where they're trying to make out that Russia, like, got Trump elected. I mean, just this ridiculous outrage with vaccines, with just this outrageous stuff that's going on. This can only go on in a planet that's full of people who are not sane. This doesn't happen when they're full of people like LAH. This doesn't happen when it's full of people like me. And I know it might sound rude and it might sound cocky. I'm just going to say it how it is, okay? I'm telling you, you couldn't get away with this shit if everyone was like me, okay? Even before I did all this self-help stuff, I was still at a level where you just couldn't pull these freaking cons on the population. I could work this shit out. You know what I mean? Other people can't. Other people can look at a wall and not see what's going on. Whereas I can look at a wall and I can see what's on the wall. Do you see what I mean? People can look at a banana and an orange and they can be like, they're bananas. And I'm like, no, that's a banana and that's an orange. I can see the difference. Not everyone has that ability. So it's just like, no, this is why when this recent thing happened to me, when I was looking at this thing with this guy, the penny dropped more. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, this is really deep. You know what I mean? This isn't just him not being able to spot this one situation. No. There must be many areas in his life that he can't work out the difference between things. And he's a normal human. So the world's full of people like this guy. You know what I mean? He wasn't like some person in an insane asylum, because obviously, you know, what they say is obviously they can't tell the difference between things. He was a normal human. If anything, he was doing better than the average person. So Jesus freaking Christ. The earth is full of these people that are looking at, like, they can't see the difference between things. They don't have their awareness, or they're just not that smart or something. They're kind of insane. So obviously they can just get conned with all this crap. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, if the world was full of Andys, this situation wouldn't happen with vaccines, you know? Or it would have gotten busted back in like 2002 or something, way earlier, you know? You can only get away with this outrageous stuff when people just aren't that sane. They can't tell the difference between two things. An observer has to be sane to sanely observe. That explains for why there's lots of false data out there. You're going in school, you're studying, you're hearing your teacher's opinion of maths, you're hearing your teacher's opinion of biology, all this sort of stuff. I mean, it's almost like there should be a law that says only sane people can write books and release them. Obviously, we can't release that law because it'll get corrupted and they'll use that as an excuse to ban people like Alex Jones or something, and you know, because things are just backward on this planet. But an observer has to be sane to sanely observe. You know, it happens a lot to me. It's just like, Jesus, man, like the quality of the observations out there is very low. People can't look and stop and see things for what they really are. And I think that's what the Data Evaluators course does. It helps you towards stopping and looking and seeing for what things are. You know what? And I reckon totally Jonathan Burke was right in saying that the Data Evaluators course is like an OT level, but for admin. People, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was just like all about doing the OT levels and stuff. I didn't realize it's just like the data, you know, is way more important. I mean, I've come across with heaps of people who've done the higher levels and stuff, and it's just like the fact that they haven't done the Data Evaluators course, and the fact that they don't know lots of data about the world. Like, for example, the Apollo stuff I was talking about earlier, right? The secret missions to the moon. This is important data you need to know. It makes you put everything together. I really understand how it's what you know. Like, you do the auditing and all that sort of stuff. You go up there and you go up to the O2 levels, but it's more you do training and that sort of stuff. And also you listen to Alex Jones and all these other sources of information. You get all this. You get your knowledge way up there. You clear your words way up there, and then you can put everything together and understand what's going on. And then you can really get spiritual gain and all that sort of stuff. It really is both sides of the bridge, right? And I'm adding my little squirrel definition of the training side. I'm adding just knowledge about the world. You know what I mean? I'm just adding that in. That's my own little altar is. Because I reckon if I just did the but also, I'm not even alter-ising it. You can't understand the training side unless you know all this stuff about the world. And that's what you learn about in the Data Evaluators course. Unless you've got datums of a comparable magnitude, you're not going to understand the hardcore deep shit that L. Ron Hubbard talks about while you're doing your training side of the bridge. You're just not going to fully duplicate it. You know? You've got to have datums of comparable magnitude. To master this Monopoly game, you need to do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. Anyway, that's it for today's show. It's time for you to climb back out of this rabbit hole, out of this interesting Scientology world. Thanks for listening. I've been your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. You have been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. So remember, what you thought was impossible is possible.